Mm.
Well, the last time I've had something like that.
Still nothing back from CBS.
Oh, do you want to use any of these roller basketball cuts for Florida?
Yeah. Um, Tastiafula and one from the fourth quarter.
One of was 55 to
50.
50.
Yep.
Okay. Any more?
I don't know if we'll have any more. I don't have time for any more.
Final call.
Yeah, that'll do it.
When in doubt, always do final call, I guess.
Yep. Hmm. Would it just be awful of me to start every day by just giving away the Wordle?
Yes.
That would be just terrible.
To some people, yes. I wouldn't care personally, but
I think it'd be hilarious.
I think if you want more interaction, then you would definitely get that if you were to do that. They just wouldn't necessarily get
I
the.
think people would just hate it though.
Hope Ministries. It's 11.
Okay. Hmm. 6:06 at Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Good morning, everybody. Brian here with you. Jake producing. We call it Mornings with Brian Haldane. Off and running to kick your week off. Off and running on your Monday morning. We are ready to roll, y'all. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Parades rolling through Baton Rouge over the weekend. Yes. LSU sports all over the place over the weekend. Most of them pulling home wins. And we got a lot of ground to cover to start off the week, too. Redistricting session ended last week, or at the end of last week. We might be looking at a war halfway across the world. There's a lot going on. So let's dive right in. Our rundown today, Richard Condon's going to be on about a half an hour from right now. Condon steps in every Monday morning to kick your week off a little bit. No clue what he's talking about today, and that's kind of the point. It's kind of what we do every single week. I want to get Richard in here to talk about whatever he talks about. Doesn't really matter because he's Condon. All right, Russia and Ukraine. Will there be a war within the very near future? Is this posturing for some other form of negotiation? What's the latest? Well, we are hoping to hear from Jeff McCausland with CBS at 6:52. I say hoping to because it's not confirmed yet. If not Jeff, perhaps another reporter with CBS. In our 7 o'clock hour, Medical Monday coming your way at 7:15. It is Heart Month, all month long. Dr. Kenneth Savillo with Our Lady of the Lake is going to talk about Heart Month at 7:15. 7:35, Stephen Wagner's back from Louisiana Association of Business and Industry is going to hop on board. Stephen joins us every single Monday. This week, we got to put a button on the redistricting session it was, which means we start to look ahead to the regular legislative session. Now, there's some other business to cover with Stephen as well, because here in Louisiana, oil and gas is big business. It's also small business, but it is big business. And when you're looking at the potential of a war halfway across the world, that's going to hit home very quickly in that field particularly. And when you've got the president of the United States lobbying for a meeting with the president of one of the countries that's about to be the aggressor in that war, potentially, well, what's on the negotiating table? What's a bargaining chip there? We'll talk with Stephen about that and a whole lot more at 7:35. 8 o'clock hour, got another Stephen coming your way. It's a two Stephen Monday over here. Stephen Procopio is the head of the Public Affairs Research Council. We're going to put a button on the redistricting session as a whole. What actually got passed? What's going to hold up? What's the governor going to veto? We're looking at all that at 8:15. And then we're going to round things out guest list-wise, talking with Terrell from LSU. Deck is in the economics department. Let's talk about the economics of Mardi Gras. How much business are we actually talking about here? Yeah, we all like to go out to the routes. We all like to go see the parades, maybe enjoy some of the surrounding festivities by, going to a parade and then a bar later on. We're going to a parade and then a Mardi Gras ball, maybe staying over in a hotel a night or two. But how much does it really mean for the state of Louisiana, not just the city of New Orleans, but statewide? And what effects are we going to see because of COVID? I know it's easy for us to look around the state and say we are in the waning days of the Omicron variant, for sure. We've seen much, much worse, for sure. The number of Louisiana residents, COVID patients right now is under 1,000. Actually, it's under 900 at this point. Things are looking pretty good here. But when it comes to tourism, when it comes to travel, it's not about what's going on here. It's about public perception nationwide, if not worldwide. We've all been chomping at the bit for Mardi Gras because we missed it last year. But is the public perception of the pandemic such, well, that was alliteration, is the public perception of the pandemic such that people are willing to travel? We'll talk with Terrell at 8:40 this morning. Got to lead things off, though, by talking a little bit about Mardi Gras. What a great weekend for parades in Baton Rouge. I mean, just played out nicely. Don't know how much of the festivities you took in. Artemis was Friday night downtown. That was fantastic. But that was going head-to-head with LSU baseball and the beginning of the Jay Johnson era, which, by the way, was kind of ridiculous. Then Saturday, you had Crew Mystique de la Capitale downtown, followed by Crew of Orion downtown. And then yesterday you had Mid-City Gras. And you couldn't have drawn up a more picturesque scenario for Orion or Mid City. They were both fantastic. Did you get out and about? Did you enjoy? Let us know. Hop in on our YouTube stream. Got a little chat going throughout the show this morning and every morning. I know we were able to take in the festivities for the crew of Orion. Went out, just the family. Kids didn't invite any friends along. We didn't have a big meetup with a whole bunch of folks, just the family, and had an absolutely fantastic time. Crowd was nice, not overly crowded, not sparse, but not overly crowded. It's a good time across the board. And Orion showed up. A couple of the high school bands that were performing as they were passing. We were in front of the State Museum. A couple of the high school bands that were performing as they were passing. Bel Air looked really, really good. McKinley looked good. U-High looked good as well. A few others. It's always hit or miss because you don't know if they're playing as they're passing you. But what were your experiences with Mardi Gras over the weekend? Or did you choose not to take part? And what do you got planned for this coming weekend? We'll break it all down as we move through the morning. Right now, though, we are due up for our first break. When we come back, we've got a lot of sports to cover. LSU men's basketball on Saturday, women's basketball yesterday, baseball Friday, Saturday, Sunday, gymnastics as well. We're going to break all that down in just a little bit. Before we take our first break, though, I want to remind you about the folks over at Hope Ministries and the upcoming Rise LA conference. What is Rise LA, you ask? Well, we've been looking at a workforce crisis around here. Forget where the unemployment numbers are at. Think about the overall workforce crisis and the revolving door of low to middle income employees. What would you say if I told you you could take that revolving door and just keep them in-house? What would you say if I told you that you could not only retain employees, pay them more, but also increase profits at the same time? It's been done. Fred Keller is the founder and chair of Cascade Engineering. He did it. He changed the way his company did business. Got hundreds of employees off of welfare while raising profits. Want to learn his ways? You absolutely can. You absolutely can. Visit risela.biz. Risela.biz. Learn about the upcoming seminar on March 22nd, the Business and Industry Luncheon. Rise LA. We all rise together.
Should I get rid of this minute-long spot?
Yeah. What was it? Oh. Okay. I don't. Yep.
And then the M1, then the final call.
Yeah. What is that? This is like play-by-play of something. Was it coming out of this computer? Oh, that's your phone. Okay.
Yeah, that extra minute would have left us about a
I don't know what it was though. So
See an accident? Report it at WBRZ Traffic on Twitter.
This report is brought to you by Shawbills, where you can get up to $170 with the purchase of 4 eligible Michelin tires. Visit ShawbillsTire.com to learn more.
Hey, it's Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. If you ever feel like you're going crazy, you're not. No, you're not. The rest of the world is
Muyak
just slipping.
46.
Join us
do what?
Muyak 46.
Okay.
1073, the new flavor of talk.
617 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. So the Jake Johnson era is here. 13-1 on Friday, 17-8 on Saturday, 21-6 on Sunday. Kind of ridiculous offensive numbers from LSU baseball, and defensively not too shabby as well. LSU off to a great start. I mean, Maine coming down. It's always weird playing teams from the north early on in the season because you don't know how ready they're going to be for the season. Not a whole lot of really good weather in February in Maine. But nonetheless, the Tigers start off the season with a sweep, a very decisive sweep at that. Coming up next, Wednesday night, they're going to be at La Tech. LSU will be at La Tech on February 23rd, 6 p.m., your first pitch. But that's not till Wednesday. We move from baseball, which is underway, to basketball, which is getting towards closer to the end of the regular season. 4 games to go in the regular season. LSU men's basketball 7-7 in conference, tied with 3 other teams for 5th place right now. Tigers just came up short on Saturday, falling to South Carolina 77-75. This despite a 14-point lead in the first half. Coach Will Wade says this was a tough loss.
This was one of those separation games that if you want to create some separation, you've got to win. We didn't get it done. We had double-digit leads in both halves. We gave up the corner 3 when we weren't set on the sideline out of bounds play. I mean, that's very, very difficult to overcome. We just did a lot of little things, look, we're in a dogfight the rest of the way, and we've got to find a way to dig some of these out.
Yeah. So a lot of missed free throws for the Tigers, 13-22 from the free throw line. Wade says making free throws has been an issue in February.
I've never seen a team that goes from, we were shooting it so well early in the year to now we're just, we're not even just adequate at the free throw line. We're poor at the free throw line. So we've really regressed there, and hopefully we can find our footing here before the end of the season.
Tari Easton led the way. He had 21 for the Tigers. He also had 6 turnovers, including one that was pretty critical with 1:43 to go. Led to a South Carolina dunk and a 3-point Gamecocks lead.
It hurts a lot. After the game, I kind of told the guys, regardless of, how much we were up in the last minute of the game, I turned the ball over, and which helped them go up by 3, and the case closes after that. So I accept 100% responsibility for, our loss today. I don't put it on, the guys are guys. We fought hard.
So LSU is at 7-7 in conference. There are 3 other teams right there. I tell you what, let's push pause for just a second. We'll hit the Fox Business Report. We'll check traffic coming back next on Talk 107.3. Hey, morning, Christy. Yeah, text coming across. Boop, 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 boop. Get the YouTube open over here. Good morning, Clinton, Eric, Kevin, and everybody else who's in this morning. Welcome aboard. So let me wrap up sports, and then we'll get over to the other 7, 8, and 9. Damn it, somebody move the trash can. Eric says they went to the parade Friday night. I take it was a great time. It was fun for us. Yeah. Artemis does a good job. Orion seemed to be lacking. Like there weren't, like the floats weren't full or something. Excuse me.
This report is brought to you by Shawbills, where you can get up to $170 with the purchase of 4 eligible Michelin tires. Visit ShawbillsTire.com to learn more.
624 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. Mornings with Brian Haldane rolling right along. So we were talking LSU men's basketball on the way into the break and where they're looking. It's looking like they're going to be a tournament team for sure. Almost for sure. Don't really know that 100% certain yet. So they're deadlocked with Alabama, Florida, Mississippi State, and South Carolina are all at 7-7 in conference right now. So you fall behind by one game, and you very quickly go from 5th in the conference to 9th, right? So it's going to be curious to see how it plays out. The LSU's remaining 4 regular season games, they're going to be at Kentucky this week, then home against Missouri, then at Arkansas, and then home against Bama. So your 2 away games, I don't want to say I'm guaranteeing them as losses, but they don't look good. You're playing a team in Kentucky at Kentucky that's 11-3 in the conference, and then Arkansas. Very few teams have been hotter than Arkansas right now. They're 10-4 in conference. Missouri is abysmal. They're 4-10 in conference. They're not totally 10-17 overall, 4-10 in conference. Not the greatest, right? But LSU has shown that they have a number of flaws in this team that are hard to make up for. And then closing out the season against Bama, who right now is 7-7 in conference, 17-10 overall. On the women's side, wow, what an amazing ride yesterday. LSU women's basketball, Kim Mulkey's Tigers put on a show against number 17 Florida in the PMAC. It was most of LSU women's basketball this year has been all about Kayla Pointer. Kayla Pointer had a rough go of it yesterday, but so many other Tigers stepped up, especially down low. For example, Faustina Fua came up big time in the clutch with an and one. Here was Patrick Wright on the call.
Morris dumps it to Afua right side of the lane. Back to the bucket. She leans in, stops, turns, shoots. Got it! It counts, and a foul! Afua from 5 feet in the lane, and LSU leads by 5.
Yeah, LSU went up by 5 right there. Afua would have, 2 or 3 blocks after that were just huge. Every time Florida tried to get to the basket, she was having none of it. and LSU ends up winning the game 66-61 was your final score there. It was really refreshing to see that many Tigers step up when Kayla Pointer was off her game. First time LSU played Florida this year, Pointer had 35. Yesterday, not so much. 66-61 was your final score right there. Here's how it sounded on the final call.
Morris to shoot for a 5-point lead. She got it. Merritt will inbound. She gets it to Rickards with 2, with 1. Long 3, no good. Horn sounds. Ball game over. Tigers win. Tigers win, and they are in second place in the Southeastern Conference all by themselves as they beat the Florida Gators by a final score of 66-61.
Pointer has 7 points on the game, way under her average, and most of those 7, I want to say 5 of the 7 came from the free throw line. Alexis Morris had 20 on the day. Autumn Newby, 13. Faustina Fua had 10. Jalen Cherry only had 6, but her presence was very well known throughout. So LSU women, they, like you heard Patrick Wright on the call right there, moved to second place in the conference. They will host Alabama on February 24th. Speaking of Alabama, LSU gymnastics beat Alabama on Friday night. And that should conclude our sports. My word. All right, you got a lot of cover on a Monday, right? There's just way too much for it to be one segment. So, redistricting session is over with, and we're going to hear a lot more about this in our news coming up in just a couple minutes, but just to kind of touch on it to begin with, Governor John Bel Edwards looking over the congressional, legislative, PSC, and BESI maps the state has already approved throughout that session. Governor John Bel Edwards says he's concerned none of the maps reflect the growth in the African-American population by adding more majority-minority districts. ULM political science professor Joshua Stockley spoke with our news partners over at Louisiana Radio Network. He says the governor can veto the maps if he wants.
He has indicated his opposition. However, he hasn't said outright whether he would veto these maps or not.
The governor's been very cautious about speaking out against something he's fully had the chance to digest. I mean, he didn't get the maps until once the session was pretty much over with, right? And once he did, are you going to move on them? What's the other viable options? There's been, I don't want to say a huge push for the second majority minority district in the Congress, but it's been a vocal push, to be sure. The Legislative Black Caucus and House Democrats urging the veto. They want the governor to veto the congressional maps because it remains with one majority-minority district, believing it violates the Voting Rights Act. Stockley says Republican lawmakers could override the governor's veto, but if he doesn't use his veto authority, he would be disappointing his biggest supporters.
It would appear he's on the losing side of the battle, but sometimes the symbolic victory or the symbolic stand is more important than what actually happens.
The problem, though, is if you want these districts to be enacted quickly, they're going to go to the courts. This is going to end up in the courts either way, no matter how it shakes out. So if you veto it, they can hold a veto session, which is going to drag things out. We're going to talk with Stephen Procopio from the Public Affairs Research Council in our 8 o'clock hour. We'll pick it up then to put a button on the full redistricting session. Here comes CBS News. Oh, my brain's not working this morning. Was it just me, or did that guy have nothing to say?
So we're not going to use cut 9?
No. Oh, man. You. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba, traffic leaving the women's game yesterday was brutal. I mean, not for me. I had post game to do afterwards, but
Yeah, now that basketball and baseball are kicking off, you really got to pick your battles when it comes to navigating traffic around campus.
excuse me, y'all. Goodness gracious. I'm off to a slow start this morning. Gotcha. Boy, it would be nice if I can get this computer to work. That would help out a lot. All right, cool. Jeff McCausland at 6:52. Huh? Yeah. Supposed to be. Whew. There he is. Morning, Rich.
What's happening, dude? Coach, thank God for District 61 Fire Department. That fire house yesterday.
Yeah.
Sure.
637. Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Mornings with Brian Haldane, rolling right along. We like to kickstart your week the right way. We like to reach down the hall and bring Richard Condon over here for a little bit. You know him from Condon Uncensored on Eagle 98.1. Rich!
Good morning, everybody. How you doing, babe?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I was doing well, but I found this out. You know, babe, when I was a small kid dressing up like Morgus or Chopsley or Haji from Johnny Quest, the go-to spot was always right there at St. Charles and Napoleon.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we went. You follow me?
Yep.
Up until the age of 8, it was just Kool-Aid with the potato salad and ham sandwiches. Then when I turned 9, it was the Miller Ponies. And we did stuff like
Miller
that.
Ponies at 9? Yep.
But you know what's happening now? The
What?
city of New Orleans, obviously, has been going down to you-know-what shoot for a long time. People started talking about Katrina. It was going down to you-know-what shoot in the 80s when people started moving to the North Shore. Enjoying you riding bikes in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Do you know right there at St. Charles and Napoleon this year, it's going to be an alcohol-free zone?
What?
Alcohol-free zone. It's for people recovering. And matter of fact, it's going to have white flags where you can't drink alcohol at St. Charles and Napoleon Avenue. True story.
Really?
They're going to have white flags, and they're going to rope it off, and they don't want anybody there consuming alcohol.
Okay.
And you being half New Orleanian, growing up on the North Shore, I'm going to give you a little credit.
Yeah, no,
So what do you think about these, B?
I can't say I'm on board with this.
That's like Gary Chambers being a president of the Daughters of the Confederacy. See, certain things. See, certain things don't go. You follow me?
No, I do. I don't know
what
why
that's
this
like.
is going to
That's
be
like Mayor Broom on her official Facebook page
Uh-huh.
promoting young Republicans of Louisiana.
I don't see that happening.
Certain things.
No.
You follow me? Certain things just doesn't happen. Or Butcher being a president of PETA.
Yeah, no, it
You
just
follow
it
me?
doesn't
Now,
make
if you
sense.
would have tried to pull something like that in the 60s or the 70s, guess what? Somebody would have got popped in the mouth. But because of these recovering alcoholics, and God bless them, maybe it's up to their restraint, maybe to, if you're going to go to a parade, understand what you're going to have to not be enticed by.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Well, so much of the routes, residential and whatnot. I mean, it's just, you go to one guy's house, just everybody pile in over there. That has to be like,
Can you imagine an alcohol-free zone on game day at LSU?
No.
On LSU, Alabama?
No, I couldn't.
All right, now look, B, here's something I got to get on you about. Not on you personally.
Oh, what
but-
did I do?
No, did you happen to see the highlights of the Michigan-Wisconsin game yesterday?
Not of the game itself. I saw the post game a little bit.
All right, so what you got is you got a 6'9" guy, Juwan Howard. Now, here's what he whines about, okay? His team's losing by about 15 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the opposing coach has all his starters on the bench, okay? So he's got all backups in. Well, the backups are struggling getting the ball in bounds because Michigan's pressing. Well, Juwan Howard had a problem with Wisconsin calling a timeout so they could, readjust so they could get the ball up the court. So when they went to shake hands after the game, the coach in Wisconsin looked at him, and then all of a sudden they got into a little verbal exchange. And then all of a sudden Juwan Howard punched the assistant coach in Wisconsin, okay?
Yep.
Now, let me tell you something. You know darn well, if it was the other way around, guess what? Don Lemon would be there. Whoopi Goldberg would be talking about it. It would be a big ordeal, okay? But let me tell you, because Juwan Howard throw a punch. You can't throw punches at coaches these days.
No.
You just can't.
No.
And there's no excuse for it. And it was amazing because driving in, I'm listening to a national syndicated sports show, and they're excusing Juwan Howard for what he did.
No.
You cannot
No, you
throw a
can't.
punch.
You can't.
See, if Bobby Knight would have threw that chair today,
Right.
instead of back in the 80s, he's gone.
Gone.
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame.
Right.
Well, now Juwan Howard can throw a punch, and everybody says it came in the heat of the moment. There are certain
No,
things you
it
can't do,
didn't.
dude. You just can't do it.
First of all, it didn't come in the heat of the moment. It came like 4 or 5 minutes into the heat of the moment. I mean, there was a good bit of back and forth and shoving and walking away and walking back up and
So now
walking
they're
away
gonna
and
see what the
walking
Big
back up.
Ten's going to do about it. But in
Nothing.
a lot of universities, that's grounds for termination.
Should be.
Direct termination.
Should be.
So look, this guy John Cantor, I love him. I saw this where he's the top health official in Louisiana, right?
Joseph Cantor.
Joseph Cantor, yeah. So anyway, he came out, and what I like about this, B, if he's true on this, then I think the worst of as far as COVID, I think it's behind us.
Okay.
You know why he said? He came out and said that COVID's not going to surge because of Mardi Gras. Now, let me ask you, if COVID ever had the perfect storm, it's Mardi Gras. You got people having sex in portalettes. You got people picking beads up off the ground and putting them around them. You got people fighting over 20-cent trinkets. So if we don't see a spike, if anything's going to give us a spike as far as passing germs, It's Mardi Gras.
Well,
There's no other event in the country besides maybe Lollapalooza in Amsterdam or something where they get nuts. I'm telling you, if Omicron doesn't spread, a COVID, a different variant,
we've all had it.
Because of Mardi Gras, it's done.
No, I know, but we've all had it. Our between vaccinations and natural immunity, we're in a nice little comfort zone right here. And yeah, Mardi Gras was the super spreader that got Louisiana out in front of COVID. Like, we caught it first because of Mardi Gras 2 years ago.
Let me ask you this, because you work with LSU.
Yeah.
And this is amazing, man. When you think about this, how many universities you think could do this on one campus over the weekend? How many?
I know where you're going. Yeah.
You started Friday, all right?
Yeah.
It seats 500 people. You had the Purple and Gold Invitational, beach volleyball.
Yes.
All right, packed.
Yes.
Friday night, you got 11,000 in a baseball game. You got 11,000 at a gym meet going on at the same time. Saturday, you got 10,000 more at a baseball game. And all these events are streaming. It's not like the old days, where if you wanted to see it, you actually had to go to the games.
Right.
And then you look at the women yesterday, the basketball game, 13,006. And, B, do you realize that Kim Mulkey in her first year is already plus 14 compared to what Fargus did last year?
It's ridiculous.
Plus 14 wins.
It's amazing what he's getting out of this team.
Really, we all anticipated Kim Mulkey coming in here and selling a program and being back home, and she said that on numerous occasions. And she's such fire. It's worth just going to the Maravich Assembly Center just to watch her coach. But what she is doing with this group of players and how they're responding to her message and how she actually, she truly cares about the women who play for her.
Yeah.
She truly treats them like their daughter. And it's amazing the job that Coach Mulkey has done with that program. And she's got like 2 or 3 4-stars and a 5-star coming in. I mean, what she's done to motivate and get that program back on a map, she's going to be National Coach of the Year. Going
no
from
doubt.
a lady who only won 9 games last year, now what are they, like 24-3, something like that? I think they're 23-4.
23-4, yes. And, yeah, the amazing part is this is predominantly the same crew that Nikki Fargas had last year. She doesn't have a full set of
Kim got a
recruits
couple
yet.
of transfers in, but still.
Yeah,
the bottom line is,
and one of them
that
put
big
up.
of a difference.
One of them is Alexis
I
Morris,
don't care
who
who
put
you
up
bring
20.
in. You're going to win 13
Right.
more games. And big look, I got a little relationship angle I came up with over the weekend.
Okay.
Went out and ate with the wife. Let me ask you a personal question. All
Okay.
right? When you go and you sit in a booth, because they don't have a full topper, so there's a booth available, right? You and Christy sit on the same side. Or
Nope.
You sit on opposite.
Opposite sides.
Opposite side. You know what? I've been noticing this for a long time. I'm with you. I think that's silly, but if you want to do whatever you want to do, have you ever noticed where the woman's sitting on the same side with the guy who looks miserable? Have you ever seen that? No, seriously. I think it's an over-possessive kind of guy. He wants to show like he's in control. You follow me? And he's the king of the castle. That's why she's sitting here, and I'm not going to give her the liberty and the freedom to sit on the other side.
Yeah,
do me a favor.
that's an insecurity.
Next time you go to a restaurant, when you go to Bonanza, wherever you go on a perfect night, Golden Corral, you follow me?
Ponchos.
Captain Jack Seafood, whatever the hell. Hey, just look for the woman who's sitting on the same side and tell me if you see a smile throughout the whole night. I guarantee you're not going to do
I'm not doubting you at all. I don't like it because, look, if I'm out with my wife, I want to talk with my wife. And that means sitting face to face and not having to, like, crane our necks to look to the side. No, I'd rather sit across.
And, hey, as far as Will Wade, something.
Dude, I don't even know.
But you know what's
I don't even know.
frustrating about
South
Will Wade?
Carolina's not great.
What it's sad now is you don't get disappointed anymore. It's kind of like, all right, they go to South Carolina and they lose.
Yeah.
I've never seen a basketball team so heckle and jekyll and up and down in this team.
Hey, we're not good at free throws anymore. Yeah. Huh? How? Why?
Do
Whose
you
fault
remember
is
the
that?
day when you had to be at least a decent shooter to be on a basketball scholarship? You remember those days?
When did that go down the you-know-what? Because, yeah.
I would just think by your 6th season, if you need a shooter, if you need a post player, if you need a wing guy, whatever.
Yeah, I know. I hear you.
All right, Big.
It's rough going. Juwan Howard, nothing's going to happen.
Big Ten's going to take some action.
You think?
Oh, yeah, they got to. They got to take some time. I mean, I heard people talking about maybe he'll be suspended for the rest of the season, maybe some postseason play. But, I mean, you got to take action, man. You can't have a coach hauling off and punching another coach. I don't care if he's up by 40 and he's pressing. Get better players. Don't let your guys get down that much. But, I mean, that whole bit where you can't press anymore, or you know what, they wanted to call a timeout with 15 seconds left, so they're up by 15. And that gives you a right. You that shallow where you can't maintain that and just remember that.
Right.
And next time you can do the same thing when you got better players than he does.
It's a conference rival. He's Richard Condon, right down the hall on Eagle 98.1. Love you, brother.
You too, bro. All right, babe.
Oh, man. The thing with Juwan Howard, he's a prick to begin with. And the Big Ten should be looking for a way to show him out the door because it's only going to get worse. And the longer...
He also went after the Maryland coach last year at the Big Ten tournament. He had to be restrained. He was going to kick his ass.
There was question. Remember when It was LSU and Michigan in the
NCAA
NCAA tournament. And there was questions as to whether or not he was even going to get to coach that game or whether or not he's going to be suspended because of that.
Because of that, right. Yep. All right, B, have a go.
You too, Rich. Thank you. I would love to know who was calling in during the segment. The phone was ringing during the segment. No, it was just a regular caller. All right, here. Kill my mic real quick.
Clear's main product checks travelers' IDs at airport securities using biometrics. Another of its products lets people skip long lines at sports and entertainment venues. Clear Secure says it has new pop-ups inside stores that could help people become more comfortable with its biometric scanning and see the value of Clear beyond just travel. Food courts, arcade games, and fashion boutiques, that's what you usually find in malls, but you'll soon be able to get a hip replacement or rotator cuff surgery in one also. With mall landlords anxious to fill empty department stores, many are turning to medical tenants. For healthcare providers, mall settings offer cheap real estate, ample parking, easy access to highways, and plenty of nearby customers. The stock market closed today for the President's Day holiday. That's your money now.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Well, John, the stage is set for the final transaction. That's right, Joe. Heather's moment has arrived, and it is hopeful that it's waiting.
Yes.
And he's founder and CEO of Dolphin 6 Leadership.
Yes, he is CBS News' military correspondent, retired Colonel Dr. Jeff McCausland.
Heather's arm is in motion, but instead of pointing at the back wall, she just drags the gum off the counter. That's a slip move. Heather back. She is out. Even Randy tips his cap to Heather. Stand up to cancer, and Rally wants you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org.
652 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. So what's going on with Russia and Ukraine? How close are we to seeing war? Joining us now to talk about this, retired Colonel Dr. Jeff McCausland. He is CBS's military correspondent. He joins us now. Dr. McCausland, good morning. Welcome back to Talk 107.3. How are you, sir?
Brian, I'm doing well, and hope you are as well.
Yes, I am doing very well this morning. Let's dive in and talk about this, because how much of what we're looking at in Russia right now, or I should say on the border of Ukraine right now, how much of this is going to lead to real action? How much of this is posturing? What's the scenario?
Well, sadly, I think that we're moving closer and closer to actual military action, Brian. What we've seen over the weekend is a number of things. One is something like 75% of the forces the Russians have arrayed on the northern, eastern, and southern border of the Ukraine appear to be moving from what I would call their marshaling areas to their final attack position. In addition to that, there are about 35,000 rebels supported by the Russians in these two eastern provinces of the Ukraine. And we've seen a dramatic increase in ceasefire violations between them and Ukrainian forces, and increased artillery and mortar fire coming across that border, striking targets in the Ukraine. At least one Ukrainian soldier has been killed, one has been injured. So it certainly seems that that's the direction we're heading. That being said, overnight, there seems to be a kind of a diplomatic Hail Mary has appeared, and that is President Macron of France appears to have orchestrated some telephone calls with Mr. Putin, the possibility at least of a summit meeting with President Biden and Putin at some location yet to be specified to try to ease back on tensions. The precondition for that meeting, however, is that the Russians do not, in fact, invade the Ukraine, and the actual framework for those discussions would be established in an upcoming meeting scheduled this Thursday somewhere in Europe between Secretary of State Blinken and Foreign Minister Lavrov of the Russian Federation.
How likely is it that those meetings actually happen? I mean, they're poised, they're ready to go. Is it just a matter of if Ukraine does the wrong thing to tick them off between now and then, or I have this feeling like they're already ready. Like this is inevitable regardless of meetings.
Well, I think you're exactly right, Brian, to tell you the truth. And again, I think the operative phrases are both sides have agreed to these meetings in principle.
Right.
And furthermore, that the precondition is that the Russians do not, in fact, invade. But their forces are certainly moving in that direction. And having been involved in a big invasion, I was commander of a battalion during the war in Iraq. I can tell you, once you move your forces to their final attack position, this is like a sprinter getting into the blocks ready to run. You can't hold them those positions indefinitely for a host of reasons having to do with intelligence, logistics, etc. So the military will be urging Mr. Putin, I think, either A, we've got to go, or we've got to back off and move the forces back away, which would then, of course, slow any process if, in fact, they decide a military invasion is imminent. So it seems to be the direction of everything right now is more towards the military option actually occurring in the very, very near future. And this diplomatic path is at least a glimmer of hope, but that's all I think it is, a glimmer.
If you've got France or the United States or literally anybody else in the world lining up to have meetings to talk with Vladimir Putin about this, what level of what's the word I'm looking for? Ultimatum needs to be laid down here to get Russia to do anything. I mean, is the rest of the world ready to jump in militarily?
Well, I think the rest of the world, and this would be most notably NATO, is not willing to, if you say, jump in the middle of this militarily as in send troops to Ukraine. I really doubt that's going to happen. And President Zelensky of the Ukraine really kind of gave the Western leaders kind of a tongue lashing at the Munich Security Conference over the weekend when he said, we are facing imminent attack and you need to come do something for us right now. But the NATO countries, including the United States, have taken off the table the possibility of sending forces into the Ukraine. That being said, there certainly, I think, has been clear evidence of an expansion of NATO forces, particularly in the countries of NATO that border the Russian Federation, Baltic republics, Poland, Romania. I think if there is an invasion, we'll see a dramatic increase in that, perhaps even more U.S. forces, I think, being dispatched from the United States to Eastern Europe, increased air activity and naval activity, a worldwide condemnation of the Russian Federation politically about every form you can think of, from the UN, the OSCE, and then last but not least, very, very severe economic sanctions being placed on the Russian Federation should they decide to attack. And then last but not least, keep in mind, Ukrainian military of 2022 is far better than it was in 2014 when the Russians invaded and occupied Crimea.
Yeah.
So this is going to be probably the largest war on the European continent since World War II. I've seen estimates as high as 50,000 civilian casualties, perhaps 25,000 Ukrainian soldiers dead, and 15 to 20,000 Russian soldiers being killed if this ends up being a wide war across the entirety of the Ukraine.
I've got about a minute and a half left with Dr. Jeff McCausland, retired colonel, CBS's military correspondent. Jeff, I got to ask, what's Russia's side of the story here? Is this just as simple as a return to a Soviet empire, or what's their motivation?
Well, their motivation, I think, is really two things. Don't forget, back in 2004, Vladimir Putin said that the end of the Soviet Union was the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century. I don't know about you, Brian. I thought World War I and World War II were pretty bad, but Putin, the end of the Soviet Union was the most terrible thing that ever happened. And he's been trying to reassert control, at least politically, over those countries that comprise the Soviet Union, particularly those with Russian speakers. And he's been working on that pretty steadily since 2004. He has invaded Georgia in 2008, invaded the Ukraine in 2014. And he's also sought to undermine the leadership of the United States and drive fissures between us and the Europeans. And we've seen that in his interference in our elections, their elections, Brexit vote, and the killing of the Russian dissidents in places like the UK using nerve gas. So this is part of that particular effort by Putin. And furthermore, to upend, which really is the framework for how the world operates, it was established at the end of World War II and at the end of the Cold War in terms of, we just don't invade countries and change territory by military action since World War II. Putin seems to suggest, no, the powerful should do what they want and the weak should do what they can. And that's the environment we're moving towards if Putin gets his way.
Last 30 seconds before I get you out of here, it's been a while since we've seen a traditional posturing for a real war as opposed to terrorism. What does this look like from a cyber point of view for the rest of the world? What kind of level of disinformation are we on the brink of looking at?
Well, two things. You got your active and your more passive measure. You're going to all kinds of disinformation. If we were listening to Russian radio and TV right now, you'd think you were in a parallel universe because they'd be talking about the Ukrainians are committing genocide in eastern Ukraine, that the Ukrainians are shelling villages in eastern Ukraine. No evidence of that, but that's what you see on Russian TV and hear on Russian radio. As far as cyber, when this attack begins by the Russians, it will begin with a massive cyber attack. We've already seen the precursors of that. There have been attacks against government websites in the Ukraine, a massive electronic warfare attack at the same time to try to neutralize Ukrainian command and control. And that will prior to a large-scale artillery air attacks and then ground forces moving in. But in response to what the West does, we could see, frankly, the Russians expanding their cyber attacks to do things against us, whether it's power grids, banks, et cetera, are not out of the realm of the possible if we start seeing escalation.
He is retired Colonel Dr. Jeff McCausland. We always appreciate the time, sir.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. We are late for CBS News. Let's get you there now. Yeah, it's been a good minute since we've seen a war that wasn't started by terrorism. Right? He's a phenomenal resource. Whew. Love being able to call on Jeff McCausland. CBS had a list of 3 different reporters available at this time, but 5 overall. And I'm like, yeah, no, just give me whoa. Damn. See the helicopter crash in the water by the beach? That was nutties. Ooh, scusi. Oh, stop it. Yeah. I thought I was going to have a minute on the back end of that one, but Jeff's just too good.
How do you spell this doctor's last name? Civello.
2 L's.
Yeah.
Yep. .706 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. Hour 2 of Mornings with Brian Haldane coming your way right now. Brian here with you, Jake producing. Again, my appreciation last hour to Richard Condon and Dr. Jeff McCausland, retired colonel with the U.S. Army, now the military reporter for CBS. Just phenomenal insight. I apologize for running a little bit long there heading into CBS News, but no doubt that's what they were talking about as well. So I figured we've got firsthand information here. Let's roll with it. You are listening to WBRP Baker Baton Rouge, Talk 107.3 FM. A lot to unpack there. And yeah, it's been a minute since we've seen a war that didn't start with terrorism, right? It's been a minute since we've seen the rise of the red threat. I'm sure we'll be talking with Dr. McCausland again, probably before the week is out. In the meanwhile, we've got top stories and trending coming your way in just a minute. Do need to ask if you got lunch plans yet for today. If you don't yet have your lunch plans, I have a suggestion for you. You know where this is going. Mooyah, burgers, fries, and shakes. You know where to find them. Blue Bonnet at Highland or Segan just north of Industriplex. Both locations of Mooyah, burgers, fries, and shakes. You're going to find the same great service. You're going to find the same great ingredients. You're going to find the best burger in Baton Rouge. I mean, when it all comes down to it, they put things together the right way over at Mooyah. You can grab one of the burgers that's up there on their menu. You can grab a burger from the Wall of Dang. You can grab a cheddar bacon burger like Haggai Davis did late last week. Haggai rolled by Mooyah. I was like, well, that looks good. He's like, yeah, with cheddar bacon. I was like, well, enjoy your nap, sir. Oh, it's dodo food. So good. So good. But you know what? If you're not down for the cheddar bacon burger, which is just ridiculous, maybe just the classic MDC, the Mooyah double cheeseburger. Maybe the mushroom Swiss burger is in order for you. Maybe the A1 cheeseburger or the double Diablo. Maybe if you're cutting carbs, you can go paleo with it with a little lettuce wrap. Or you can always build your own. Mooyah, burgers, fries, and shakes. Like I said, they're on Segan, just north of Industriplex, or Blue Bonnet at Highland. Get your lunch knocked out at Mooyah today. All right, top stories and trending. Let's roll. Whew.
On Talk 107.3 FM, the most trusted name in news. Brought to you by Complete Collision Center, with locations in Zachary and Baton Rouge. Don't let who you choose to repair your vehicle be your second accident. Choose CompleteCollision.com. I want to know absolutely everything that's happened up to now.
Start off talking about the Mardi Gras parades over the weekend in town, but I got to take issue with our news partners over at WBRZ who have the headline, hundreds line the sidewalks as Mardi Gras parades roll through downtown. Hundreds? Might be a little bit more than that. Saturday's parades in downtown Baton Rouge were no disappointment, and hundreds filled the streets. Dozens of people, tens of people. Me and 8 guys. A lot of folks out there Saturday night. Good-looking parade Saturday night for Crew of Orion with Mardi Gras celebrations. Floats all decked out in their Mardi Gras decorations, tossing beads to excited youngsters, grabbing as many throws as they can. So you had Orion Saturday night. Before that, you had the Crew Mystique, the oldest Mardi Gras parade in Baton Rouge, hit the streets. Mystique's a crew known for having family-friendly celebrations. Saturday's warm weather was perfect for the parade. In honor of COVID healthcare heroes, physician's assistant Luke Davis was named the Grand Marshal. Of course, before Saturday's parades, there was Artemis Roll in downtown Friday night. Yesterday, Mid-City Gras had a huge turnout as well. And judging by the lack of headlines, looks like BRPD got their job done and everybody played nicely. Zachary police are asking for the public's help in locating a missing 19-year-old. Donovan W. Jones Jr., he's known as DJ. Jones was last seen at his house on February 16th around 1:15 p.m., according to his family. He's 5'8", got dark brown eyes, weighs 145 pounds. A prayer vigil was held for Jones 5 p.m. Sunday at the New Pilgrim Baptist Church up in Zachary. Grabbing this one from the Advocate, the new president and chancellor of Southern University's system will bring 4 decades of academic administration experience with him to Baton Rouge later this year. The Southern University Board of Supervisors voted unanimously Friday to name University of Wisconsin-Platteville President Dennis Shields as the 11th president of the Southern University system and his second president-chancellor. Shields will replace President-Chancellor Ray Belton, who announced last year he would be retiring in the fall of this year. Shields said during his interview at Southern that his highest priority as the new president and chancellor would be to improve student outcomes at the end of their college studies. Now, he's been selected. Next stop, contract negotiations with the board. An arsonist, or alleged arsonist, has been arrested. A man accused of trying to set fire to an apartment building last month was arrested over the weekend. The Baton Rouge Fire Department said Gerald Pullins was arrested Sunday, booked on 2 counts of aggravated arson. On January 22nd, investigators believe Pullins placed a bag of clothes on the steps of a unit of the Greenview East Apartments on North Ardenwood, set fire to it. The department said the fire caused $1,500 worth of damage. A person was shot to death early Saturday morning on South Choctaw Drive. Baton Rouge Police Department said 55-year-old Leslie Blackburn was injured in a shooting around 2:46 a.m. Saturday in the 13,000 block of South Choctaw. Blackburn was transported to a hospital, later died for a gunshot wound to the midsection. Detectives had not yet identified a suspect nor a motive. Those are your top stories. Here's a look at what's trending this morning. Jake, it's time to invoke the shark, alligator, raccoon rule.
Oh,
what is the shark?
We're adding the raccoons now?
Hey, he gets in. The raccoon gets in.
I agree.
What is the shark, alligator, raccoon rule?
If there is a news headline with mentioning a shark, alligator, and now raccoon, we got to talk about it.
Yes, we absolutely do. Now, when you talk about alligators, you have to include crocodiles. A 93-million-year-old crocodile has been uncovered by scientists with a baby dinosaur in its belly. It's been dubbed the Confractosuchus soractonus. I know I'm mispronouncing that, yeah. Or broken crocodile dinosaur killer by experts, was found with a prehistoric baby in its stomach. A report from the Gondwana Research believes the huge croc grew to around 6 to 8 feet long. Believe it died in a flood. A crocodile died in a flood? That seems weird. The reptile is said to have been 35% preserved with a near-complete skull and its teeth as well. Researchers examined it in more detail using 3D scans and x-rays. Joseph Bevitt, co-author of the study, says, quote, in the initial scan in 2015, I spotted a buried bone in there that looked like a chicken bone with a hook on it and thought straight away this was a dinosaur. Well, come to find out, this was a dinosaur. Yeah, scans of one of the boulders that the crocodile was found in found, quote, bones of the small chicken-sized juvenile dinosaur in the gut. The species of dinosaur has yet to be identified. Those are your top stories in trending. Quick break. When we come back, let's talk about Heart Month as Dr. Kenneth Savello joins us next. I can't talk on Mondays. I don't know what my problem is.
My brain's a little slow.
So tongue-tied. It's tomorrow. Please delete them. Delete the promos. Yes, it is time for Medical Monday, and yes, February is Heart Month. We're not done with February just yet, so we're not done with Heart Month just yet. Joining us now to talk a little bit about atrial fibrillation and a few other topics is Dr. Kenneth Savello. Doc, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good to know.
February, it's Heart Month. There's a lot to be excited about.
Yes, there is, although I give fair warning. Over the next 12 minutes or so, I'm probably going to mispronounce about 15 words. It's just the way it's going to play out. So let's start talking Heart Month a little bit. You're a specialist within cardiology, an electrophysiologist. What is that?
An electrophysiologist is sort of like I tell my mom, I'm like an electrician of the heart. In cardiology, we've become sort of very specialized because cardiac disease is very difficult to take care of. So everyone sort of has their own areas of specific expertise. And so we have plumbers that open up vessels. We have carpenters who repair heart valves, and we have photographers who take pictures of your heart. So I'm the electrician of the heart. I specialize in things like atrial fibrillation, slow heart rates, fast heart rates, palpitations, passing out, even kind of, in the past 2 years, even sort of post-COVID like heart symptoms. So that's sort of my area of expertise.
How do you get into that area of expertise? What made you want to become an EP?
An EP it's an interesting field in that in a lot of fields in medicine, you either diagnose or you treat. And in EP, it's sort of a cool field because, if you were to have a heart rhythm problem, I would take you into what's called the EP lab, and I would pace your heart very fast. I would give you medicines. I would slow your heart rate down. I would speed it up. And on the fly, I would actually diagnose what is wrong with you. So I'm not diagnosing you before I'm bringing you to the operating room. I'm actually diagnosing you while you're there. And then once I know what's going on, I can then use either freezing or burning to cure what you have. So to me, it was very exciting because you're actually diagnosing and treating someone at the very same time. So I think that's the excitement of that is what sort of drawn me to the procedure, to the field.
Let's explore that a little bit because, it is fascinating right from jump. So you would slow down my heart or speed up my heart. How?
We put catheters into your heart, which are basically like, long strings with electrodes on them. Mm-hmm. And then we place them in different areas of your heart, and then we deliver electrical energy through a stimulator. And so we're able to take control of your heart by placing these catheters and using a stimulator. And so those things, the things that we do, recreate things that happen in the real world. And so people may feel like, oh, I just had a skip beat or an extra beat or a miss beat, and we're able to recreate that in the lab, which will then show us what is the problem with the heart.
More often than not, what does it show you? What's the more frequent diagnosis you see?
Probably the most common thing that we take care of is something called atrial fibrillation, which is a fast, irregular heart rhythm. People generally get as, people usually ask me what's the number one cause, and I say gray hair. So it is something that we get mostly as we age. That's probably the most prevalent disease that I personally take care of.
So aside from the gray hair, what are some of the signs and symptoms?
Signs and symptoms are breathlessness, you're short of breath, fatigue, tiredness, feeling like there's a butterfly or a hummingbird in your chest. Those are mainly the things that people feel. We've been really lucky in that, smartwatches have also helped us diagnose atrial fibrillation, and that a lot of people may or may not realize it, but people who wear, say, an Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch, there are algorithms inside of the watch that will tell that person, hey, you may want to seek medical advice because your heart is beating fast and irregular. And that often, more times than not, is atrial fibrillation.
How much of this is needed before an alarm should go off? I mean, there's stuff like fatigue or maybe that fluttering every once in a while. Is this, if you see it once or feel it once, it's time to call somebody, or what's our window here?
Right. I mean, what I said are very generalized, terms, which, you could feel fatigue and shortness of breath from just about anything. But if you're feeling that your heart is racing for more than 30 seconds, that's generally the time to call a doctor. Everyone's going to feel, oh, my heart skipped, or maybe I missed a beat. That's very, very common. That's normal to feel that. Those are called premature atrial contractions or premature ventricular contractions. And so that's generally not anything to worry about. It's when it lasts for more than 30 seconds that you should really try to seek medical advice.
What's treatment look like? What options are available?
So there are a lot of options, and I always like to start out with just lifestyle. So it's hard to tell people that, listen, you have this, but you can fix it with diet, you can fix it with exercise, you can fix it with making sure your sleep is treated. And when I say sleep is treated, making sure you don't have sleep apnea. So, the first thing is make sure you're eating right, make sure you're exercising, make sure you don't have sleep apnea. The next phase is generally medicines, and there's 20 different types of medicines that we have to take care of atrial fibrillation, and then the third step would be surgery to treat atrial fibrillation, which is sort of the majority of what I do with my day.
It's crazy, like as many technological advancements as there are. We're going to talk about those in just a second, but a lot of the treatment is the very, very basic stuff that we should have been holding down this whole time.
It's so true. It's so true. And, we're set up for failure with the food that we eat and the lifestyles that we lead. But yes, if you just keep it simple and say, listen, I'm going to eat right and exercise regularly, you can stop a lot of atrial fibrillation.
Dr. Kenneth Savello is our guest. We're talking about your heart health throughout February. And yeah, Doc, I have I do spots for a weight loss program, and like literally there's no time on the calendar in Louisiana where it's a good time to start a diet. Like we're in king cake season right now, which walks us up to crawfish season, which walks us up to grilling season, then tailgating season, then the holidays, then rinse repeat. Like,
yeah, I tell people it starts the day you buy your Halloween candy.
Yeah.
and then it really doesn't end until maybe you get close to summer. But yeah, you can make the argument that you can roll right through summer and still never find a time to say, okay, it's time to eat right.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're 100% correct.
So let's talk a little bit about the treatment options that are out there, along with the basic stuff. You said medicine would be next. What are the options once we move into that phase?
Yeah, so the medicines are medicines that pretty safe medicines that we prescribe kids, and they're not necessarily toxic medicines is sort of our first line. But then you get into types of medicines that you need to get admitted to the hospital to get initiated on, and these medicines can be dangerous, but they do a really good job at treating your atrial fibrillation. Beyond that is really what's next is something called an ablation. And what an ablation is when we take these catheters that I spoke about earlier and we insert them into your heart, but instead of delivering electrical energy to pace the heart, we actually deliver either heat or cold, and we either burn the tissue or freeze the tissue to destroy the areas where the atrial fibrillation is originating from.
That's fascinating. It covers so much ground in one little topic. That's crazy. When it comes to any prescribed medications, is there hesitancy to get people on, and is there a difficulty getting people off?
So, no one likes to take medicines, and
right.
So there is always a hesitancy to get on. And, just to back up, before, I went to residency, it was felt that atrial fibrillation was a disease that was uncurable. And then we took it to a disease that medicines could treat. Recently at Our Lake, we enrolled patients in a trial called Stop AF First. And what this trial did was it said, okay, if you have atrial fibrillation and you've had 2 episodes of atrial fibrillation, you're going to be randomized to 2 groups. The first group is going to get medicine. The second group is going to go for an ablation right away. And what that study found is the earlier you go for the invasive therapy, the better off you do long term. Because the more atrial fibrillation, the medicines don't work as well. Mm-hmm. And the more atrial fibrillation you have, the more atrial fibrillation you get. So interrupting the disease early actually has better long-term outcomes.
What's the comfort level of advancing that quickly, though? I mean, normally you try to reserve things for last resorts.
It is. And, I would say, the surgery, the ablation does have, complications. I tell people there's 1 in 1,000 risk of dying. There's 3 out of 1,000 risk of stroke. There's risk that I could paralyze your lung. So there are some big risks, but what is the risk of not doing anything? Right. And that's what you have to ask yourself. The risk of having a stroke, if you have atrial fibrillation, can be anywhere between 2 and 8% per year, depending on your risk factors. So there is an early upfront risk, mm-hmm. But if you're trying to sort of manage your risk over your lifetime, what is my 5, what my 10, my 20-year risk? You're probably better off going for the invasive strategy. But that's a hard thing for people to understand. But that's basically what the data is showing.
No, it is difficult to grasp that on the front end, but it's a testament to where technology has gone so far. So in the remaining minutes, Dr. Kenneth Savello is talking a little bit about atrial fibrillation and the like. I told you I was going to mispronounce something. How far have we advanced in, let's say, the last decade, and where are we headed technologically in this field?
We've advanced a lot in the last decade. I've been in practice in Baton Rouge for about 15 years, and I would say, initially, I was at the Cleveland Clinic before I came here, and it was not uncommon to have what we call 3 do's, which was you had 3 ablations to cure your atrial fibrillation. And then we moved into a procedure where we were treating people who had very hard to treat atrial fibrillation with a procedure which we call the convergent procedure, which is a procedure in which we're not just ablating from the inside, but we're ablating from the inside of the heart and the outside of the heart. And that procedure is still a procedure we use today, but really at Our Lake, we were at the front of the nation and starting this procedure, and we continue to be sort of a large volume center. And then recently, in the past probably 8 years, there's been something called cryoablation, which is actually freezing the tissue, where we take the tissue down to minus 40, minus 50 degrees, and that procedure in my opinion, and I do all of them, tends to be safer, and patients are really tolerated. Some patients could even go home same day.
That is just fascinating across the board. Hey, where can folks go if they want to learn more?
So there's a lot of places. The American College of Cardiology, has good information, and the Heart Rhythm Society has good information. But locally, if you just go to ololrmc.com/heart, there's a heart health knowledge, and you can sort of answer a quiz that may lead you to some information that may help you out.
He is Dr. Kenneth Savello talking atrial fibrillation, and as Heart Month is drawing to a close, we always appreciate the time. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. We got CBS News coming your way in just a second. Before we get to CBS News, need to remind you about the folks over at Complete Collision Center. You know where to find them. They're on Plank Road in Zachary. They're on Perkins just east of Bluebonnet in Baton Rouge. More importantly, they're at CompleteCollision.com, where you can go to learn more about what they do. What do they do? Well, they're going to fix your car safely. They're going to find the hidden damage if you are in an accident. Need to call them, 768-9898. I love it's an easy phone number because when you get into an accident, you get to choose where your car is going to be repaired, which means you need to know the number, 768-9898 or CompleteCollision.com. A dozen major car manufacturers have certified them, also have the iCar Gold Class certification. Don't let who you choose to repair your vehicle be your second accident. Check out CompleteCollision.com. And I'm caught up. Bing bong. Oh, I'm way behind on comments. Here we go. Not sure how much I would listen to our media either. Debbie said at 7:01, so it's probably in response to me asking Dr. McCausland about misinformation. Yeah. Well, it just our media is such an ambiguous term at this point. I don't know how Juwan Howard says this was self-defense. He was the aggressor the entire time. Prick. Anyway, yeah, the media is such. Am I the media? Is TV the media? Are you talking nationally or locally? Are you talking about blogs versus journalists? Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Galen, everyone, let's see. Based on the video I watched, players need to be disciplined too. Ridiculous. Jalen, Juwan Howard, yeah. So the players are going to follow their coach here. I have no problem pointing the finger at one dude. There's no way I'm going to look at a bunch of 18-year-olds who got rowdy and say they need to be held just as accountable as the guy in his 50s. The guy in his 50s kind of needs to be better. Let's see. Everyone in the fight should be severely disciplined. Back in my day, if we did this crap, we would have been kicked off the team. So every team that I've ever been on, yeah, that would have been the case. But I was never on a team where the coach was the discipline problem. And that changes the game to me. The coach is the leader. The players are going to follow. If the coach wants to fight, the players are going to fight. Ooh, excuse me. Van says there's a train heading into town. That's a long one. Expect delays at airline in the next few minutes. Okay, good to know. Thank you. That was half an hour ago, so I'm right on top of shit. In a 2012 presidential campaign debate, Mitt Romney said that Russia is our number one geopolitical foe. Obama laughed. Yeah, he also called ISIS the junior varsity at one point. For as smooth as Barack Obama was, not a real big grasp on the national security level. All right, I'm going to run another flight of stairs. I'll be back. I got to shake this yawning, and I don't know how to get it out of me. It's just shitty. Okay. Debbie says, nope, media propaganda by Russian TV. Our national media is no better. What, the rain? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna be live in just a minute or two, and we'll get you on, okay?
737, Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Mornings with Brian Haldane, rolling right along. Every Monday this time, we like to talk a little business, which means we welcome in Stephen Wagerspeck. He heads up the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. Stephen, good morning, sir. How are you?
Brian, doing great, man. How are you?
I could not be better. This was a fantastic weekend, so I'm doing good this morning.
Fantastic weekend. I love it. I saw on social media you got a little LSU sports in.
Yep.
You were just talking to my cardiologist, Kenny Savello.
Really?
He's great. He's a rock star. That guy's one of a kind. So, man, you're not only did you have a good weekend, but you're starting your week off right. Talking to a smart guy who can help you stay healthy to kick off Heart Awareness Week or Health Week or whatever it's called.
It's the entire month. It's Heart Month, which, by the way, it hasn't been overlooked that Heart Month coincides with Valentine's Day. That can't be a coincidence, right?
You know, I got to think that there's some grand holiday kingmaker somewhere in a back room who thought that out and put it all together. And good for him or her. I'm glad they schemed it all in the same month.
Got to talk business, and I want to start on the world stage because when you're in a state that produces a lot of oil and gas, you pay attention to headlines about Russia and Ukraine because there could be impacts back home. What kind of impacts could we be looking at in our oil and gas industry based off of what's going on with Russia?
Well, you know, there's consumers and there's producers, right? And so, look, we've been saying, and look, you said this on your show. You've had people on your show for quite a while now that in the last 2 years, this administration has done everything they can to make us less competitive on the world stage when it comes to energy production. They have shut off federal lands. They have made it very difficult to get leases on waters in the Gulf. They've done everything they can to halt pipelines. This is what they think is good for the country to make us less competitive and more dependent on international energy suppliers. And so what happens whenever you have Russia, who's sitting in pole position on that front, and they start, rattling the chains as far as what they're going to do on Ukraine, and the markets respond negatively because they see that dependence on hostile sources. And so, yes, prices are likely to go up. There's no doubt about it. Now, in a weird, twisted way, if that happens more, do the administration get out of their irrational bunker and get back into a rational bunker and say, okay, maybe we should produce domestic energy. Maybe we should try to make it easier to produce energy in the Gulf. Because if they do turn back to appreciating and encouraging American energy, Louisiana is as well suited as anyone else in the country to hit the ground running. And so, look, I would expect that this uncertainty overseas is going to lead to exactly what folks have been saying, higher prices. As people get back into the pandemic, post-pandemic economy and start moving around, demand is going to go up. Supply is going to be threatened because of this, so prices will go up. But maybe it'll be the one thing that can get D.C. to start thinking irrational. And if not that, it's going to be the fall midterm elections, because if this administration and this Congress thinks that they can send people to elections this fall with energy prices still escalating up like they have been for too long, there's going to be a serious day of reckoning in the ballots. Finally, we'll get some different policymakers in charge.
How much of our livelihoods is a bargaining chip?
Well, I guess you could say a lot. Look, there are certain areas of this state that are quite dependent on energy production, and those are the ones that are suffering the most right now. You have a lot of folks who they're working, but they're not working in Louisiana. They're going other places. They're going overseas. They're following the jobs, and most of our energy workers are used to that. We have our supplier economy here throughout the bayou and other areas where they know how to supply energy production, and they prefer to do it here in America, but they'll go overseas to do it as well. So companies are still working, and people still have jobs. They're just not in these zip codes. They're living on an airplane or on a truck, and they're commuting to other places where that's happening.
All right, enough of worldly affairs. Let's bring it back home and talk about what's on LABI's plate. What's on LABI's plate right now?
Well, we're kind of in that purgatory era between sessions, right? We just finished the redistricting session, and the next session begins, mid-March. And so what we're doing is trying to get ready for the next session. And this next session is going to be filled with some opportunity to really touch on some things when it comes to education and workforce, in our opinion. Because of the federal stimulus money that came down in the last couple of years, and because consumer behavior is still going pretty high, and governments have got all this stimulus money in the response from D.C., we don't have a budget problem. So you're not going to have budget cut discussions. It's going to be how to spend money. So budget should not dominate this session, which should leave ample opportunity to focus on what we think is the most critical issue facing the state, which is the status of our education system. Over the last 2 years, too many kids were sent home or forced to learn in restricted environments, and the scores are showing it. We got half of our youngsters, our K through 3s, who are not reading on grade level. You've got trend lines like that up and down the chain, and so we think that there needs to be a pretty intense look at how to speed that up. One thing we're going to be focused on, I think, is to try to give more choice and mobility to families up and down the economic spectrum. Right now, if you're a family with means, and if you don't feel good about what your kid's getting as far as education, you can pick them up and put them in a different school. You could go to private school. You can supplement with tutors. You can do with all kinds of things. Well, if you're a family that does not have the means to do it, especially in an era where energy prices and other prices, inflationary demands are all over the place, that's not fair to keep those families stuck in a system that's not serving them well. And so we think there needs to be more choice. We think that is things like education savings account and scholarships and vouchers and all those things and more. Whatever the legislature's appetite is to be aggressive on that front, we want to be helpful there. And one category that really is near and dear to some of our hearts is a special needs education savings account, because while every kid has had a rough couple of years with all the different restrictions that came in schools, if you're on the special needs spectrum and it's really hard for you to communicate or listen or stay focused, and you've been doing it, some virtual, some in person, some with the mask, some through teacher in a mask, some off, some on, those kids have really fallen behind. And so we really would like to see some choice and programs put in place for special needs students as well. But all students deserve the same thing, even especially with those that don't have the economic means to just pick up and move to another school if it works best for their family.
Stephen Wagasback's our guest. We're talking with the head of the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. As education is on the forefront here, where are we at? You mentioned the American Rescue Plan dollars and a potential beefing up of the budget there. What about new streams of revenue as well, specifically getting out in front of the mobile sports betting and maybe righting a wrong that we saw when we first got casinos in the state and thought everything was going, when we heard education, and we thought that was K through 12, but maybe not so much the case then. Where are we at with making sure dollars are going where they need to go?
You know, I think that will be a big focus of this session. When I hear from legislators, it's not so much will we have enough money to fund education or health care or roads or whatever. That's not really what they're talking about. What they're talking about is they want to put in place robust transparency and accountability for all these dollars that are being spent on the federal plan, and it only makes sense that that's going to roll over into state expenditures as well. You've heard us talk on this show numerous times the last couple of years that Louisiana checkbook, which is modeled off of Ohio checkbook, should be implemented with robust fidelity so that taxpayers could see where every dollar's going. Look, it's begun to be implemented, but there's a lot more to go on that, and so we'd love to see that also get, a higher scrutiny. On the sports betting, the truth is, you do hear anecdotally that it has taken off, that it has become quite popular. As REC can give those specific numbers to the legislature. I think once we know exactly what those numbers are, and once they can start predicting what trends will be, yes, it needs to be implemented and directed to key areas to make sure we're getting the return on value. Thus far, I think that there's still just too much anecdotal information of what's coming in on that, and REC needs to recognize some of those dollars so legislators know what they're dealing with.
Yeah, whether it's $1 or $1 million or 10 million, whatever the case might be, I don't care how large or small the number is. Complete transparency on where it's going, because we all got burned last time.
Yeah, well, I think the reason why is because, if you just say, hey, we're going to dedicate these dollars to education, everyone's going to say, oh, education, that's such a good idea. Way to go. We love education. That's not really moving the needle. It really is where specifically those dollars are going. And if you're just dumping it into a generic fund that can be watered down so everyone gets a little piece and stays happy, that's not moving the needle for students. And so if you're going to prioritize education or transportation, or economic development, look, those are all noble aspects. If you're going to prioritize healthcare, meeting staffing needs and employment needs, if you're going to do any of that, that's fine. But don't just create some generic fund that everyone can feed from and everyone's bottom line can go up a little bit. That doesn't help. That's what we've done over the years. It has to really go into targeted programs that move the needle, that it change the lives of individuals in this state. So if we're talking workforce, put it into dual enrollment, put it into the community and technical schools, put it into the nursing training programs, open up some of those slots. If we're talking education, I would say put it into remediation and tutoring, put it into providing choice for low-income families so they can go to better schools. I think competition can raise the performance of all these schools, and if they start knowing that families have choice and can walk with their feet, if they don't like what they're getting, they'll start improving some of their games to keep them there.
Got about a minute and a half left with Stephen Wagasback from LABI. Stephen, looking back on the redistricting session that was, you feel comfortable handicapping whether or not the governor is going to veto any of the maps?
Well, it is difficult to handicap that. The governor throughout his term has taken a wait-and-see approach for a lot of his veto decisions. That's just kind of the way, every governor kind of treats it differently. Some come out on the front end and make a clear position. Others kind of wait and see. He's more of a wait-and-see guy when it comes to that. But I would tell you that he has surprised folks over the years. I can tell you 2 years ago when we were pushing legal reform with others in a big coalition, the word in the Capitol was, you're wasting your time, he'll never sign it. Well, he did.
Yeah.
And last year on tax reform, when, there's a big group pushing for that as well, and the word in the Capitol was, you're wasting your time, he'll never sign it. Well, he did. And so right now, I think the word in the Capitol is that he's likely to veto at least one of the maps, and maybe he will. Maybe he'll veto more. But you know what? He has surprised folks in the past, and I think I'm assuming he's going to do his due diligence and take a look at it. Going into redistricting, the truth is we all knew it was going to be filled with a lot of accusations and finger pointing in the microphones. Check, that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And we also knew when it got done, it was going to be up to the governor, and then no matter what he did, it's going to go to the courts. And so we're entering the second phase of that process. And when he makes a decision, the legislature will be back in session during the regular session. They can consider overrides. And if he does veto any of the maps, I think there's going to be an aggressive effort to try to get an override.
Okay.
If I had to guess which one most likely, probably the congressional map.
Yeah. And
the only reason I say that is because politically, the national groups are pushing for veto the hardest on that, and that national noise is pretty loud. So if he's going to have any form of a political analysis for his base, that might be the one he takes the hardest look at.
You mentioned the possibility of a veto override session, which we've already seen, and it came up short. They held a veto override session and literally got nothing done. I can't help but have it in the back of my mind that that level of swing and miss would only embolden the governor to veto.
Well, it could, but I think he understands, like everyone else does in that Capitol, that every session has its own DNA and its own persona. And that last session was different issues. It was the first time it had ever been done for them to call themselves in. It was close. It was highly contested. This is a different animal. Right now, you've got redistricting sessions going on all around the country. You've had vetoes overridden all around the country. This is kind of a different time. And also, these are maps that deal with people's individual prospects. And so it's one thing for someone who's considering an override to be convinced to just, bite your lip on this one. When you get to this session, it could mean the matter of whether they are viable or not for reelection. And so it's a different dialogue, different persona. And around the country, you're seeing overrides become more common than not. So I think there's a chance if they come back that they can actually get one done.
He is Stephen Wagasback, president of LABI. Did you get any parading done over the weekend?
Sorry?
Did you get any parading done over the weekend?
I did not get parading done. My wife went out of town for a couple days on business. I was kind of playing solo daddy most of this weekend, but I did sneak in a little golf game, so I did enjoy a little bit of the weather. So good weekend, some time with the boys, some time on the golf course. I wouldn't have beat it.
We will talk to you next week, sir. Always appreciate the time.
All right, big guy. Have a good week.
You too. Quick break. Coming back, we get the outside in coming your way next. See, what's going to happen is, I'm going to have this fatigue the whole time, and then as soon as we get out of the Monday morning meeting, it's going to be like, oh, I'm wide awake. If we even have a Monday meeting, I don't think we do. Holiday. It's President's Day. Gordy's out of town. Chris is out of town. Cade's coming back to town. Yeah. Oh, I've got your thing. Talk about it later. What do you mean starting today? Oh, I think we're thinking about different things. That thing. Not the first thing, the other thing. You know, the guy with the thing in the place? The guy with the face? All right. Debbie says, media propaganda by Russian TV. Our national media is no better. Byron says, I disagree, Debbie. There's no real dissent in media in Russia. There are debate shows, but the format is such that it's ridiculous anyone defending the West. Here's the thing, Byron, and I don't fully disagree with you, but I don't fully disagree with Debbie either. Our debate shows are scripted food fights, is all they are. There's no debate, with the exception of Bill Maher. I give Bill Maher a lot of credit. But aside from Bill Maher, not a whole lot going on there. Aside from Bill Maher, Like, it is one side piles on the other. Now, the fact that you have them on one side on one channel and the other side on another channel lends to your point. But as far as within the shows themselves, nobody has a real discussion. It's a food fight. Hey, that's painless. I sat down with Danielle and I was like, make sure this is easy peasy. So. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba! 7:55, Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Thanks again to Stephen Wagensback for hopping on board. Talk a little bit about where we're headed next, the redistricting maps. So, interestingly enough, Stephen is with LABI. When we were at LABI's annual meeting, was it a little more than a week ago, almost 2 weeks, Thursday before last. Bo Staples sat down with us. He takes a look at the political crystal ball, if you will, and mapping things out. Everything's going to end up in the courts with these redistricting maps. And Bo's take, and it's available on demand at talk1073.com, was it's actually more politically expedient for the governor to just sign them. Because if you veto, you're going to get a veto override session. If you get a veto override session and your veto is upheld, all you've done is pushed it back to when it's going to get to the courts. Meanwhile, if you have a veto override session and the veto is overridden, it's still going to end up in the courts anyway. I don't know, crazy stuff. Hey, don't forget, Talk 107.3 FM and Citizens Bank and Trust want to help make 2022 as easy on you as possible. We're picking up somebody's car payments this year for the entire year. We've also got a few other great prizes as well. 6 months worth of free car washes from Benny's Car Wash. Visit talk1073.com. Click on our free car payments for a year sweepstakes if you would like to register. All right. Every day at this time, we step outside of East Baton Rouge Parish. We check in on the surrounding parishes. And this is a segment called The Outside In. We are starting off in Livingston Parish. 2 people were hit by a car that drove through barricades during the Rio Parade Saturday night. According to KATC, the pedestrians were taken to a hospital, suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Police said 31-year-old Jessica Richard was arrested, booked on her second offense of operating while intoxicated, 2 counts of vehicular negligent injuring as well. A space heater was to blame out in Livingston Parish as a fire destroyed 2 homes and 2 vehicles early Sunday morning. Livingston Parish Fire Protection District 2 worked with Albany and Colyell firefighters to extinguish the blaze around 3:30 a.m. Sunday. Fire officials say an unattended space heater in one of the homes originally sparked the fire. The second home, only 13 feet away from the source, caught fire shortly after. Smoke alarms then alerted the occupants. The fire district reported. All occupants were outside of the homes when fire crews arrived. No injuries were reported. Over to St. James Parish. Deputies are searching for 3 suspects who tried to steal an ATM with a stolen truck early Saturday morning. Oh, this is glorious. St. James Parish Sheriff's Office said around 3:30 a.m. the security alarm was activated at First American Bank in South Vacherie. Upon arrival, deputies found an abandoned truck with chains running from the ATM to the vehicle. Turns out, the vehicle was stolen about an hour earlier from St. Charles Parish. They hooked it up to the ATM, couldn't get what they were trying to get, so they just bailed on everything. In St. Tammany Parish, the body of a 72-year-old woman was recovered from Lake Pontchartrain early Saturday morning. St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office said the body of Jacqueline Creasy was pulled from the lake near Slidell shortly before 1 a.m. Saturday. Police said Creasy initially fell off the I-10 twin span near mile marker 258 after getting out of her vehicle to check the damage done following a single vehicle accident. Deputies with the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office said an autopsy will be done tomorrow. Closing out in New Orleans, Mardi Gras is back, Jazz Fest is back, and the announcement's been made that the French Quarter Fest is back as well. Thousands of people are expected to fill the French Quarter. When it's not the last weekend in April, it's April 21st through the 24th. You got hundreds of performers out there as well. It's good to see everything starting to return. That's the outside in. Let's get you to CBS News on Talk 107.3 FM. Woo! All right. Kiev. Maybe it's well, there's a character in the Righteous Gemstones named Kiev. Except that's Keef. Keef. Kelvin's friend.
No one pronounce stuff like this.
Kiev. All right, there's that. Hey now. Very slow day for sports today. Like sports in history. Yeah. It's crazy. You got it. Yep. Okay. How are we doing? Oh, Keith. I have failed you, Kelvin. No, Keith. I failed you. All right. Side note. Who's watching the Righteous Gemstones? Christy and I are completely caught up. And it's crazy. Like, trying to figure out. So there's these mysterious bad guys on motorcycles. They're calling them the Cycle Ninjas. And Christy and I are like, there's 2 or 3 different people could be behind the Cycle Ninjas. Like, who's sending them out there? And one of the potential people is Eric Roberts' character, Junior. And we're debating, like, is it Junior behind them or is it the Lessons, this other megachurch couple from Texas? And eventually I'm like, wait a minute. Eric Roberts actually told me he's the bad guy. It's got to be him. I know. I didn't realize it at the time when he was on. He's like, no, I do play the bad guy. Remember he said that? He says, we were talking about the movie that he was talking, I called him about. He's kind of the bad guy, but not really. And he says, in Righteous Gemstones, I do play the bad guy. I'm like, son of a... 806, Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Hour 3 of Mornings with Brian Haldane coming your way right now. Brian here with you, Jake producing. Got a busy hour this hour. First of all, thanks again to Dr. Kenneth Savello talking about Heart Month. And thanks again to Stephen Wagaspack from LABI for hopping on board last hour. This hour, we're going to recap the redistricting session. Stephen Procopio heads up the Public Affairs Research Council here in Louisiana. He will join us at 8:15. We are also going to talk about the economics of Mardi Gras. Deck Terrell from LSU's Economics Department is going to join us. Right now, though, I got to remind you one more time about, well, not one more time, all week long. This is the last week to get King Cake, Shoal. Last week for King Cakes before we close things out a week from tomorrow with Fat Tuesday. Mardi Gras season comes and goes, and it always seems like it leaves out of here pretty quickly. Well, looking like that's going to be the case again this year. So get them in now. Get your King Cakes while you can right now over at either location of Matherns, downtown on 3rd Street, or at Nicholson at Skip Bourbon Drive, the Nicholson Gateway Shopping Center. It's right across the street from Tiger Stadium. And by the way, full-service grocery store. And by the way, yeah, they're on campus. No, they're not just for students. I was by there yesterday. I was producing the LSU women's basketball game. Swung by Matherns, grabbed myself a little something to snack on during the game. And actually, sweet heat honey ham sandwich. Yeah. Check out the deli section over there. You want to talk about an underrated lunch option. Matherns has got you covered. And yes, oh, by the way, as the parades are rolling, swing by for all your parading gear, just like you would for tailgating. Parading is basically the same thing here in Louisiana. Matherns has got you covered. Downtown on 3rd or Nicholson in the Nicholson Gateway Shopping Center right across the street from Tiger Stadium for Matherns. All right. Every day at right around now, Jake takes us back in time. It's a segment we call This Day in History.
Good morning to all those tuning in. We're starting things off in 1842. The first known sewing machine is patented in the U.S. by John Greenough in Washington, D.C.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I just always assumed the guy who had the sewing machine was named Singer.
Meh.
That's because that's the name on all the sewing machines, right?
Ah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Guess I haven't seen enough sewing machines to get that one. 1848, Karl Marx and Frederick Engels published the Communist Manifesto in London. 1931, Alka-Seltzer is introduced.
Ha! It took a minute to get from the Communist Manifesto to the need for Alka-Seltzer. I feel like that time frame should have been shorter.
Yeah, just a little.
Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief. Why do I remember that?
1948, NASCAR is incorporated.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
48.
Yeah.
1953, the longest collegiate basketball game, 6 overtimes. Niagara beats Siena, only 88-81.
6 overtimes?
6 overtimes, and you get a cumulative score of 169.
See, that's, yeah. How many games last weekend beat that without going to overtime at all?
What's the over-under? I'd take the over.
Oh, yeah. No! Well, yeah, by the time you get to 6 overtimes, take the over, but clearly they were at the under for the end of regulation.
Yeah. 1965, rights activist Malcolm X is shot dead by the Nation of Islam followers in New York City.
Yep.
1970, Jackson 5 makes TV debut on American Bandstand.
American Bandstand, yes.
1975, John Lennon releases rock and roll album.
Okay.
1981, Charles Rocket clearly says the F word on Saturday Night Live.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
81. 1989, U.S. busts Chinese drug smuggling ring, capturing a record 820 pounds of heroin worth $1 billion at street value. 1990, the Batman theme The Batman theme by Danny Elfman wins Grammy Award for Best Instrumental Composition at the 32nd Annual Grammy Awards.
Okay.
Last thing I got, 1993, it's the 43rd All-Star Game in Salt Lake City, Utah. West beats the East 135-132 in overtime. There were 2 MVPs. Who were they?
Oh, that's a giveaway.
Yeah.
1993, 2 MVPs, and it was in Salt Lake City, Utah. There's no way this wasn't Stockton and Malone.
You are correct.
Boom.
Nice.
Hey, I didn't even know that one, but I used context clues.
That was good, actually. I didn't even think about it like that. That's all the events I have. You got any for me before I hit the birthdays?
Nope. Hit the birthdays.
First up, Alan Rickman. May he rest in peace. He was born on this day in 1946.
Wow. Hans Gruber.
Mm-hmm. And Severus Snape.
Hans Gruber.
Yes. Very talented actor. Sophie Turner, Game of Thrones star, turns 25. Jennifer Love Hewitt is 42.
42?
Yes.
Okay.
Jordan Peele is also 42.
Yep.
Man City player Riyad Mahrez turns 30. Kelsey Grammer is 66. Kumail Nanjiani is 43.
He's a funny guy.
Very funny. And finally, Justin Roiland. He's the co-creator of Rick and Morty. He turns 41.
Rick and Morty's underrated.
Very. Well, my generation, I think it's properly rated.
Yeah.
That's all the birthdays I got. You got any for me?
Alan Trammell, Hall of Fame Detroit Tigers shortstop.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to all those mentioned. One death to report. I mentioned it earlier.
Malcolm X.
Yes, Malcolm X passed on this day. May he rest in peace. Holidays. President's Day.
Boom.
That is this day in history.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it is time to recap the redistricting session. Stephen Procopio with the Public Affairs Research Council joins us next. Keith. What happened? Dak? Hey, Brian. How's it going? Hi. Got one more segment to knock out before you. I just emailed you back because I completely ran as a holiday. I didn't even know they were open up front. So okay. I was like, text me when you get here. So okay. All good. But you're in. Good deal. Good deal. Yeah. Right here. Yeah. I appreciate you coming in, man. That's fun. So, one of my best friends in the world used to work in your office a long, long time ago. Ryan Bilbo. I don't know if you remember him. Oh, wow. Way ago. Yeah. I'm sure there's been a million student workers, but this. Yeah. Ryan actually was full-time working for 7 years. Really? That long? Okay. I think it was 7 years. 5 or 7, somewhere there. So he got his master's. Yes. Yeah, we went to high school together, stood in each other's weddings. Good dude. St. Paul's. But from in Covington, but yeah, St. Paul's, yes. I don't know what kind of stories he had, but neither he nor I played very much. A lot of stories about us standing on the sidelines next to each other for sure. Well, he told a story He did. Yes, yes. Against John McDonough. Yep. Golly. Forgot all about that. Oh. 8:15, Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Hour 3 rolling right along. We are nowhere near done yet. Got a lot of ground still to cover. We'll talk about the redistricting session here in just a second. After that, we're going to talk about the economics of Mardi Gras. What kind of impact are we actually looking at, and what is this year shaping up to look like as well? Terrell from LSU is going to join us in our 8:35 segment. Right now, though, we shift our focus to the state capitol and what just wrapped up with the redistricting session. Joining us now to talk about it from the Public Affairs Research Council of Louisiana, Stephen Procopio. Stephen, welcome back to Talk 107.3. How are you, sir?
Oh, great.
Glad to have you on this morning. Glad to be chatting about this. As it looks like they got everything done that they needed to get done. How did it shake out from PAR's standpoint?
So from PAR's perspective, from a process standpoint, there were some good things and some bad things. I think it was really great that they had all this information and they made sure there was 24 hours before there was any vote on something after a bill got amended. So people had time to actually look at the information that was there. On the other hand, they could have done some stuff better. I think they were real hesitant about some of these consultants that they were using. They could have told us up front who they were. There was no reason. We all knew they were using consultants. Just tell us who they are and for the sake of transparency. On the process side, if you're basically happy with the maps, then you're probably happy with what they did. It was basically, they went in and said, what can we do to do the minimal change possible? And I think a lot of constituents will be happy with that. On the other hand, if you were hoping for an additional minority district, then you're going to be disappointed because there was no change here. They also didn't redistrict the Supreme Court, which was a tough ask. It requires a 2/3 vote, and they don't have to do it. So everyone kind of knew that probably wasn't going to happen, and they did not disappoint there.
Let's stick with that transparency aspect for just a second, because this is something that State Representative Barry Ivey, though that wasn't what his quote that got all the attention, a different quote got all the attention, but he did say he didn't like the level of debate that was had within the session. It felt like everything was kind of hammered out ahead of time. With so many consultants being brought in and so much work being done behind the scenes, did that lead to less debate than what was needed from this session?
So there are two different things. One is, was information for the public readily available, and did they have time to digest? I have to say the answer is yes to that. I think it was very transparent from the sake of, hey, everyone could see what the maps were, and they had at least 24 hours to look at them and contact their legislator and be like, I like this, I don't like this. On the other hand, I don't know that public input made much of a difference in this discussion. The information was there, but I think basically it seems like they decided, all right, we're going to try and do the minimal amount as we can to get out of this redistricting process. And just, as population shifts, we're going to make some changes because we have to, and then let's get out of there. And I don't think public input had a lot of sway on their decisions. I think they had sort of had that in their mind. And again, you may be happy with that. I don't want a lot of change. So if you're one of those people, you can't fault them. But it did seem like it was, let's tweak this instead of redo this and then get out of there.
Yeah, when you were last time you were on, one of the discussions we had, or one of the points in the discussion we had, was about retaining jobs, retaining individual,
right.
A redistricting session can get very territorial when it's your own job that's on the line. So,
yeah.
I mean, some of the changes we saw had to do with outgoing members of the legislature and the like.
Right.
It kind of played out that way.
Well, and it's kind of a tradition, and I understand why they do it. Is an area loses population, then they try to take people that are redistricting and cannibalize their discs. districts. And that's kind of what happened. You saw basically the northwest part of the state in the Shreveport area kind of got hit, and that's because they lost population. So you had Representative Cox and Senator Peacock up in Shreveport. Their districts got moved either to the North Shore or in the New Orleans area. Basically, they made room for increasing population. And I can see why both of them were upset. Both of them voted against the bills that moved their districts. But yeah, understandably, there's not much you can do. Something had to give just because of the population shifts.
Now, when it comes to the individual maps that passed, I believe only the Public Service Commission went through with more than a 2/3 majority, which kind of suggests that if the governor chooses to flex on vetoes, his veto would likely be sustained. Is that Parr's take as well?
Slightly. We don't really take on political predictions, but on a non-official Parr statement, I'll tell you, I think right now what it mostly looks like, if I had to guess, is I think the governor, if he was going to veto anything, would just be the congressional map. That is the only thing that the statement from the Black Caucus asked him to. It seems he's been reticent to put his veto on the line, and I think probably the most likely thing that would be sustained would be a veto of the congressional map. There's a lot of people from both parties that are unhappy with it. You have people from St. Mary, St. Martin, that sort of area, and how that got divided up from Grant Parish. There's all Republicans sort of upset with the map. So that probably makes the sustain of any veto he has probably more likely, which then makes it more likely he'll even issue the veto in the first place.
How much of the overall political climate is going to be under the microscope for a veto versus not vetoing?
I mean, how would it not be under the?
I know.
Yeah. It's definitely under the. This is the big question, and this is something that Parr asked for. Was like, Governor, give us a clear tripwire. It says if you do this, you will get a veto, and if you don't, and he kind of stayed coy, which is a shame because I think he had a real chance to influence things. As it was, I think the House and Senate, who are mostly Republican, went forward with their plans as they were and didn't make any changes based on what the governor would have said. And now everyone's kind of guessing what he will do. And then in addition to all of just the vetoes, and then you have this lawsuits. So there's whatever happens to the vetoes, I think there's definitely been statements that said, look, if there's not additional minority representation, then there will be lawsuits. And so I think that's ultimately how most of these things are going to end up.
Talk with Stephen Procopio from the Public Affairs Research Council of Louisiana about the redistricting session that just concluded. Now, Stephen, if he only vetoes the congressional map, I mean, it is quite possible you're not going to see any change there, because one of the arguments this whole time has been, while mathematically 33% of the population should be represented by 2 of 6 seats, which that equation adds up, but geographically it might not add up. So if he's only vetoing that one map, is he losing the possibility of actually seeing change? I mean, wouldn't he have more possibility if he were to veto more maps to gain more representation, not on the congressional level, but within the state as well?
It's a political question, I think.
Okay.
Because on the one hand, if you veto more maps and say, look, there's a better chance of getting a disrepresentation maybe from Bessie or maybe the House districts, in their way to get another House seat. But again, I think it's going to be tougher to override. Oh no, it's going to be tougher to sustain a veto. I think there's a lot of support for the House and Senate maps because they were basically supporting their own districts. So except for a few people, I think that would be one of the tougher ones. On the other hand, I think there's a lot more contention around the congressional districts. Actually, a lot of contention around the Supreme Court, but that didn't even pass, so there's nothing for him to veto. So he could actually issue a bunch of vetoes. At some point, though, it's really a decision. Are you vetoing too many things? And he's just like, well, now you just undid everything we did, Governor. That's why kind of hoping that he had more clear discussion on what he wanted to do. And he has to just sort of make a tactical decision at this point. And like I said, a lot of this is going to get decided in court.
Yeah, a lot of it will be decided in court. It's kind of you're putting all your eggs in one basket sort of scenario, though.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, but on the other hand, you're asking the governor to say, okay, look, veto all these things, and maybe something. There's also a spaghetti on the wall. Like, yeah, I'll just veto everything and see if I can make something work. And it might be. I mean, a 2/3 vote is hard to come by. But some of these were pretty close, and I think on the House and Senate ones, I think those would get sustained. There wasn't any contention with the public service one, so you're really just looking at, the Bessie map, and I don't think that was necessarily all that contentious. It was very close. So I'm not seeing what the additional benefit would be. That being said, it's all bargaining chips, and this is politics, and so he may in fact do it. But I got to lean on the fact that really there was only one map that the Black Caucus asked him to veto, and so I think they're trying to. It could be all your eggs in one basket. It also could be focusing all your energies too.
Totally. Stephen Procopio with the Public Affairs Research Council. Now, leading up to the session, PAR had listed out some recommendations that they were looking for, that y'all were looking for,
Right.
when it comes to both transparency and fairness. You touched on it a little bit, but let's kind of elaborate on what you liked, and but more importantly, what didn't they do this time around that you would have liked to see more of?
All right. So first, I'll just be clear. It's very difficult to do redistricting. There's a lot of conflicting values, and you can't get everything. It's like basically on those house hunter shows where you want to have a short commute, but you want to live in the country. You just sometimes can't get everything. So I want to cut them a little bit of slack. That said, there's a lot of things they didn't do. Again, it seems like they had their plan. They had a lot of public testimony. I think they were great about listening. I don't know that they actually heard or were making any changes based on that. Like I said, it did give the public time to digest the map proposals. I would have to give them a thumbs up on that. They were very good about that. The committees, even on the floors. They had all these outside consultants, but again, I think they should have just disclosed from the beginning. I don't know what they were trying to get out of that. The governor could have set more clear parameters. I think they could have done a lot more to encourage voter participation and acknowledge diversity. I mean, even just adding a district of influence that maybe wasn't a minority, but would have said you can't ignore minority votes in this district on lots of different maps, not just congressional ones. And then also on the reworking Supreme Court districts, that needs to get done. They didn't get it here. There's a lot of discussion that maybe will happen in the regular session, which again, they can revisit any of these things in the regular session too. So we'll have to see what happens. But overall, from a process-wise, it wasn't bad. I thought there was a lot of information, a lot of input, but there was a lot of more they could have get done in terms of disclosure, and certainly it was a very status quo session.
Does PAR have a take on the maps that actually made it out?
No, other than we would have liked to see more acknowledgement of diversity. But we're not saying there needed to be an additional minority district. There could have been other things they could have done. Like I said, had districts of influence where maybe it was a majority, but you could have put a significant portion of minority voters in there. So especially given our open primary system, could have had a lot of impact. So I think there's more they could have done on that area. But there's not particular takes. We're not sort of saying this is a bad map or a good map. Like I said, because at the end of the day, these things can have a lot of conflicts. You can have a very competitive map, but then you have you don't have compact districts. And so it's hard to, I don't want to judge any particular map too harshly.
Can we unpack one little bit about that? And
sure.
I'm not asking you to critique the maps themselves, but you said encourage more diversity within, but not necessarily pushing for a second majority minority district. What is the aim then with encouraging more diversity? What was PAR looking for?
So, for example, you could have the way you draw maps. You could say, "Oh, look, we're gonna put a whole bunch of minority voters in one district, which means there's not many in the surrounding area." Or the other, so that's really packing, and the other one is sort of known as cracking, where you were going to spread out all the minority district voters. But even if you can't get to a second majority minority district, and whatever that means, depending on what you're looking at, maybe you can, if you can't get to 50%, maybe you could get to 40 or 45%, such that if you run in that district, even if you're a Republican, you have to take that into account and treat it seriously. Because otherwise, if you're just going to write off 40 to 45% of the vote, it's going to be an uphill battle for you to win the district. So you at least have to take that into account. And then if you're a minority in that district, even though you're not a majority, you know that your vote's still going to count, because there's going to be lots of people that are going to be courting your vote, even if they're Republicans.
So basically, if you couldn't get to a majority minority, you'd still be in the minority, but let's say cover the spread so the right candidate could get a win.
Exactly, particularly given our voting, our primary system, where it's not this pure party primary. I think that it could have been taken into account. I don't think anyone was interested in that. I don't think the Republicans are interested in doing that. And I don't think even the Democrats or the Black Caucus are interested. They wanted another district. And I understand that completely. But I think there were probably some things that could have been done. And at the House level, there could have been, I think there were opportunities to maybe add additional seats. They're talking about the state House level. I think there was enough, flexibility there in those districts to make some of that happen.
Last one before I get you out here, and I greatly appreciate your time, will there be anything left over from the redistricting session that will get in the way of the business of the state when the regular session convenes?
You're sort of talking like just politically and bad feelings rolling over, or actual bills that they have to deal with?
Little column A, little column B, Stephen.
So if they want to tackle Supreme Court districts, I think there's some discussion they want to do that maybe in the regular session. Of course, that was the contentious part that had Representative Ivy bring up. So I don't know they have the appetite to do that. On the other hand, there just could be some bad feelings that roll over, but it's politics, and all these people are, you have to move on from that fight and go on to the next. And you have to have sort of short memories in that regard.
He is Dr. Stephen Procopio, president of the Public Affairs Research Council of Louisiana. I greatly appreciate your time. We'll be calling on you as soon as PAR's out with their guidelines and recommendations for the upcoming regular session as well.
Oh, you know it. I would absolutely love to come back. Thanks, Brian.
Appreciate it. A lot of great information right there. A lot to unpack, and we're not near done yet. As if there is a veto override session, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because the last time there was a veto override session, and like Stephen said, everyone is of its own thing. Last time there was a veto override session, nothing was overridden. They all got together at the Capitol. They met for a few days. Then they said, we'll go home. So, different story here, though, because you are talking about job preservation. Anyway, let's close the book on that and start talking a little Mardi Gras from a business perspective. Terrell from LSU joins us next. I thought I had another full minute. I was going to get a live read in there. Come on over. Ooh. So, easy peasy discussion. You're done by 8:50, and we're good to go. Yeah, it's an easy segment.
So are you interested in New Orleans or Baton Rouge or
Yes.
both?
Yeah, statewide, and then what we do here locally.
Okay.
But, I mean, obviously New Orleans is always the big draw.
Yeah.
So, but also COVID impact, because it's going to be twofold, right? You're going to have the number of people who are chomping at the bit because we didn't have last year, and then the number of people who would normally fly in but are like, let's hold off for one more.
Right.
That sort of thing. So it's a double-edged sword, if you will. It is Dr. Terrell, right?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so.
Although you wouldn't want me to operate on you.
Seeing everything coming back all at once has been kind of exciting and scary at the same time. It's like, oh, by the way, we're on YouTube, so there's a camera right over there.
Okay.
I try to remember to remind everybody that we're on YouTube and we really don't take breaks. It's kind of informal during the breaks, but we don't. It's not like a normal TV show where we go to commercials. So it's just kind of camera and mics in the background.
Okay.
So, but all good. Oh, I can't wait to get somebody else on to talk about this this segment. I love talking LSU. You guys are such a great resource for damn near everything under the sun. But tearing down Kirby Smith, I mean, staple. Like, I lived there. Everybody served time there at some point. Oh God, it's long since overdue. Such an eyesore of a building, but I mean, it's the building from Good Times, basically. Yeah. Its time was pretty close to pass when I lived there in the spring of '96.
They took us over when we were looking for new space for the survey lab.
Okay.
Kirby Smith. And,
Yeah.
You know, we were trying to look around probably about 2005.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But the remodel was just crazy expensive. So.
Well, that building's been used for like random things like transition headquarters for Bobby Jindal, like just non-LSU stuff. So you would think it would be more adaptable.
Well, I think the space was, just because it was dorm rooms, it was really hard to convert to anything like office use.
Well, y'all ended up with some pretty decent facilities in the end anyway, so all good. I'll do traffic in the final. I mean the traffic, weather in the final segment, just so we have enough room to run here. It should be us coming up soon. Okay.
Hey, this is Ken Coleman from the Ken Coleman Show. You can listen to me weeknights from 11 p.m. to midnight on Talk 107.3 FM, the new flavor of talk in Baton Rouge.
8:37. Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. So we're a week and a day away from Fat Tuesday. Mardi Gras Day coming up 1 week from tomorrow. Mardi Gras, while it's a great party, is also an economic driver for the state of Louisiana and, well, South Louisiana in particular. Joining us now to talk about that, Dr. Terrell from LSU's Orso College of Business. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Doing great.
Glad to have you on here. Glad to be talking about this because, well, if for no other reason, it means Mardi Gras is back, unlike last year. So let's start there. What kind of impact did we see by not having Mardi Gras last year?
Well, to talk about what kind of impact you saw by not having Mardi Gras, you really have to talk about what's the impact of a normal Mardi Gras.
Yes.
So I think that's the challenge.
Okay. What kind of impact do we normally see for Mardi Gras then?
Well, I started looking into this, and one of the surprising things to me is there aren't as many studies as you would think.
Amazing. That is surprising. I mean, there's study after study about the impact the Saints have on New Orleans and the state as a whole. It does surprise me because it feels like it's such a big driver.
Oh, it's a huge driver. So I think the real reason there aren't a lot of studies is because for something like the Saints or something like a large sporting event, the state's making a decision as to whether to provide a subsidy to get the event.
Mm-hmm.
You can also do a study of the Saints based on attendance, so you know how many people are there.
Right.
So Mardi Gras has two important features. It's difficult to measure the number of people that are there, and also there isn't really an interested party that necessarily will pay for a large study of the economic impact of Mardi Gras.
What do we know?
There are a couple of studies that I can mention.
Okay.
One is by Tony Weiss at Tulane. and she did an interesting study where she came up with, that's a 2014 study, so that's why I said there aren't many studies.
Okay.
She came up with $534 million in current period dollars as the economic impact of Mardi Gras. That's based on a total when you include hotels, dining, all the things, spending on local merchants in New Orleans. The impact of Mardi Gras in terms of spending was about $160 million, and then the indirect impact, spending by those people who benefit from that initial round of spending, push it up to over $500 million. There is a more recent study by Wallet Hub that said that the economic impact was $1.1 billion, but you can't find a report anywhere that gives the details of that study.
1.1 billion. I mean, that's literally double what the previous study would note. What's your gut take on it? Where do you think it falls within there?
I think Tony's study said that it was somewhat conservative. So I would say $1 billion wouldn't be too optimistic.
Okay. The breakdown within there, you said Wallet Hub doesn't offer the breakdown within there, but the impacts of Mardi Gras are seen from, planes that take off and land, hotel rooms, dining, other random spending throughout. Obviously, we're going to see the largest impacts in New Orleans, but when you get outside of New Orleans, the rest of the state, what do we see? Like, for example, Baton Rouge. Do we see any kind of return on or uptick in tourism around this time?
I think you're definitely going to see an uptick and an impact on Mardi Gras. There hasn't been a study on Baton Rouge, but there has been a study in Shreveport. The Shreveport study said $22 million.
Oh, wow.
So Baton Rouge, you'd think, would have a little bigger impact than Shreveport. You certainly could say $20 million of impact in Baton Rouge. I think when you start throwing around big numbers like $1 billion, it's kind of nice to put that into context.
Okay.
So what does it mean to have $20 million of additional sales in Baton Rouge? And that's about $50 a person.
Okay.
So it's not, an unthinkable amount, but it's a significant amount when you look at hotels and restaurants and things of that nature.
Well, the $50 a person is based off of who's here, but I mean, what we're looking for here is new blood, new money, people coming in from out of town. So it's not us footing the bill.
Right, that's exactly right. So I think what you want to look at in terms of Baton Rouge is a little different than New Orleans. New Orleans is attracting an awful lot of people from out of town, international visitors from all around the country. Baton Rouge, we are going to get some people from out of town, but we're also going to keep some people at home in Baton Rouge instead of having them going to the New Orleans Mardi Gras. So that's going to have an impact locally on the Baton Rouge economy that just by keeping people in Baton Rouge.
Sure. Retention would play a huge factor in overall dollars. We see the same thing when the Bayou Country Superfest, when it was around. We saw a lot of people come to town, but more importantly, we saw people who normally travel for that weekend stay home for that weekend. It all ended up having impact. We've got Dr. Deck Terrell is our guest. He is with LSU's economics department over at the Orso College of Business. Dr. Terrell, got to ask you about the COVID effects for this year and what's expected from Mardi Gras this year. I think COVID probably will play a factor. I just don't know in which direction. Is it expected that people are chomping at the bit to travel again? People are chomping at the bit to get out and re-experience life? Or is there still that level of hesitancy because of a lingering pandemic?
So I think there are offsetting effects, just exactly as you said, right? There are some people that are chomping at the bit. They want to get out. They're going to want to immediately go to something fun. So Mardi Gras is a great thing to go to. On the other hand, you have some people who are saying, I don't really want to get in that plane and fly. There are some international visitors, and it's a real pain to travel from abroad and come into the U.S. to make that travel. So I did look into this a little bit. One of the things that I looked at, it used to be that when you went to New Orleans and you booked a hotel room during any big event like Mardi Gras, there was a 3-night minimum stay,
Okay.
and things were pretty full about now. And what I saw is that not all the hotels in the downtown area were 3-night minimum stay or 3-day minimum stay, and not everything was full up. So that would suggest to me that the COVID effect is probably going to go a little bit negative.
Okay.
I wouldn't think, I think there are offsetting effects, so it's not going to push you from $1 billion impact down to a $500 million impact, but it could cost a little bit.
Aside from the pandemic itself and any level of hesitancy about travel, there's economics behind the travel as well. There is just the affordability of it right now. You mentioned the 3-night minimum stay. There's also fluctuation in rate and whatnot. When we look around the country and we see jobs coming back at a certain clip and at what rate of pay and the like, are we going to see that spill over into the number of people who literally can travel right now, can afford to travel right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point, because you do see this inflation where everything is more expensive. Although it seems that because people have been saving during the pandemic, a lot of people have saved up enough to where they're able to pay the higher prices and seem to be able to travel. In order to benefit from that, though, you have to have the employees to serve that food,
right?
To go out and man the hotels and take advantage of the tourist. So that's going to be another issue on the economic front. Is the labor market is still struggling a little bit to find the workers that it needs to provide the services that used to be provided, during any event, including Mardi Gras.
What about, okay, so this might be a little bit off kilter here, but does crime ever play a factor in this as well? Because New Orleans has been seeing ridiculous headlines. Baton Rouge had just a stupid year last year. Does that play a factor in the overall, I don't want to say decision, well, yeah, in the decision to make us a destination?
Yeah, I mean, crime is definitely going to play a role, because if somebody makes a decision whether to go to Mardi Gras in New Orleans, at the margin, a tourist is going to consider, am I going to be safe in New Orleans?
Yeah.
Somebody younger may decide, hey, I'm a college student. They may not be too worried about the issue of crime. Somebody older that's, maybe thinking it a little bit and say, hey, do I want to go to New Orleans, or do I want to go to the beach somewhere that's a little more of a controlled environment? So crime definitely could play a role.
When looking at this year's Mardi Gras in kind of a bigger picture scenario, should we kind of take this year with a grain of salt? Because the Mardi Gras before the pandemic, I mean, like literally like weeks before the pandemic, the Mardi Gras before the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken, had set record numbers. It was huge.
Oh, the Mardi Gras before the pandemic, I was down there. We had out-of-town guests down there, massive crowds in New Orleans. So it definitely would be a record breaker in terms of it. And in fact, it may have been one of the things that spurred the pandemic on.
You're not going to find much debate on that. I think a lot of us agree that it was so huge down there. And then sure enough, New Orleans is leading the way. And then after that, the state of Louisiana out in front on cases and whatnot. I've got to ask you this one. As an economist, as somebody who studies, every year, New Orleans measures the success of Mardi Gras based off of garbage, like tonnage of garbage. Your professional perspective, your expert perspective, is that a good gauge here, or should we be looking towards something else and just calling that as much fun as Groundhog Day?
Well, I think the reason they do that is because they don't have anything to anchor the attendance at Mardi Gras on. If all the hotels are already full, you can't say that, hey, we have more people because we have more rooms rented in the hotels.
Okay.
So maybe they were full last year, this year, and they'll be full the next year. So how do we judge that there are more people? Well, the garbage, I think that's the way they started using garbage. Now, if people throw more beads from every float, that's not really a great gauge. The other problem, I think, is that when you think about measuring the impact of the Saints or measuring the impact of a big event like the Super Bowl, you have attendance in the stadium to kind of anchor your numbers. as far as the number of visitors. And then you can do a survey and say, hey, for everybody in the stadium, they bring 2 people who hang around New Orleans and don't go to the game. So you can definitely get a good number on the number of visitors. When you look at something like Mardi Gras, you're thinking of measuring the number of miles in the parade and how deep the crowd was, and coming up with a measure like 2.5 feet per person or something like that.
Okay.
So that's why garbage shows up as a measure of number of visitors, because it's something that's hard to measure.
What would it take to get, and we got about a minute left, what would it take to get a real gauge of, because you say there's not much impetus for it because there's no, you're not, Mardi Gras is going to be. It's going to be whether we like it or not, right? It's not like you're looking for some kind of enticement deal from the state or that sort of thing. What would it take to get someone over the hump to really dive into this, to know just how impactful it is?
Well, I mean, one thing that was unthinkable before last year is you could not have Mardi Gras.
Right.
So you can compare a year when you didn't have Mardi Gras to a year when you did have Mardi Gras. And last year is the first year where, before this, you couldn't say, I'm going to do a natural experiment and I'm not going to have Mardi Gras.
Right.
But actually, we have an experiment where we didn't have Mardi Gras. So I think that gives you an opportunity to get a pretty good estimate of what the impact of Mardi Gras is. From year to year, you would need to go down and send out a lot of interviewers to ask people how much you're spending at the event. And then you are going to have to do something to try to measure the size of the crowd.
Yeah.
We do have some better methods of doing that now with aerial photos or photos from large buildings to try to use some sort of technology to do that.
Even that, as good as that sounds, even that would be, we didn't have Mardi Gras, but we didn't have anything. Like, you're subtracting that plus everything else along with it. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see it play out over the next week. Are there any indicators leading up to it that give y'all clues as to where it's headed?
The only one I would say, and this is, 10 minutes of looking around at hotels to see whether you can get a room. The fact that you can get a room is a little different than just prior to COVID. I mean, the last Mardi Gras that we had. So, but I wouldn't put too much stock in that, because over time what you see is more and more Airbnbs available and things like that. So there may be a little competition to the hotels where, relative to a few years back, when you had to get a room when you went to New Orleans and stayed overnight. It's a little different.
He is Dr. Terrell from the Orso College of Business. Doc, I appreciate you hopping on, man. Thank you so much for the insight.
Okay, thanks a lot.
One segment to go. We'll close it out next on Talk 107.3. Oh, yeah, that's surprising. You would think, like, this is our bread and butter. You would think everybody, the lieutenant governor's office ought to be all in on this.
Well, Tim Ryan and Janet Spire used to do this every year.
Yep.
So I assumed when LSU said, we'd like to list you as an expert on this, and I said, well, I'll just go over the studies.
Okay.
And because I do a lot of impact studies, I can talk about them. And I start looking at it online, and I've corresponded with Tony Weiss, and Tony said, yeah, everybody uses my number. It's a 2014 study.
Which is 2014 was 2 presidents ago. Yeah.
So.
That's 2 presidents and a pandemic ago.
Yeah.
I feel like it just as a state with there's more room to grow.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the info. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. How long do I have?
get up to $170 with the purchase of 4 eligible Michelin tires. Visit ShawBillsTire.com to learn more.
8:56, Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. I just poured myself a whole other glass of water with only one segment to go in the show. That was silly. Anyway, one segment to go here on Talk 107.3 FM before we hand off to the Fox News Rundown. Thanks again to Dr. Terrell from LSU's Orso College of Business talking about Mardi Gras. I am shocked, y'all. Shocked to learn that this isn't something that we just have, and Dr. Terrell explained it fully. Like there's just not enough. There's not enough information out there. And, you know, we judge the success of Mardi Gras based off of the tonnage of garbage. Come on. It's 2022. Can we not do better than that? I tell you what, we only got about 2.5 minutes left. We'll dive back into Mardi Gras in just a second. I do have to give you that forecast that we missed out on a little while ago because we're going to be looking at light rain throughout the week this week. In fact, today's high is going to get up to 78 degrees. Ugh. Overnight low of 68. Tomorrow, we're up to a 40% chance of rain with a high of 83. 25% chance of rain on Wednesday with a high of 84. 65% chance of rain on Thursday with a high of 84. And guess what? That 65% chance of rain on Thursday is where you're going to see the resetting of the cooler temperatures. Friday, we're looking at a high of 59 with an overnight low of 44. Nowhere close to freezing, but definitely resetting the cooler weather. Right now, we are at 68 degrees in downtown Baton Rouge. Hey, did you make it out to Orion Saturday night? If you did, you likely saw our own Jake in the Talk 107.3 vehicle. I saw him. I think I had Abby on my shoulders when y'all were driving by.
Yeah, at the time we ran out of beads.
Yeah.
To throw people, and so we had the windows up. And then all of a sudden, to the right of me, I just hear someone screaming, "Hey! Talk 107.3!"
I was yelling.
What was that?
I was yelling. I wanted some of those special beads, man.
I know.
The ones with the little shot class. So here's the thing, though. Ran it early, bro. I mean, pace yourself, man. You're not a martyr. You're not a new. You're not a regular.
I brought my girlfriend.
No, I know.
Versed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you were out by the time you got to me,
we didn't have a lot of materials.
I know. And did you throw a lot of the? So one of the things we do. Wait, let me make sure I'm good at this. Get this, and we're good to go. If you caught one of the special beads from Talk 107.3 and you have not yet posted a picture of it to your social media, do so and tag us because Dave Attell is coming to L'Auberge and we want to send you there. Dinner, show, overnight stay, boom. L'Auberge is taking care of you. If you caught the special beads from Jake or Jake's girlfriend, boom, post it up. We'll get you in there for the Dave Attell show. We are drawing for winners, I believe, in a week, maybe 2. Anyway. We throw those honey buns, too.
Oh, yeah.
The honey buns are popular.
Oh, I was
surprised. We can't go wrong with the honey buns.
I didn't know, because, like, some people were like, I threw beads to someone. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, give me some. I throw a honey bun at them. They're like, what? Oh! And then
when it comes down to it, everybody's throwing beads. Mm-hmm. Not everybody's got them tasty cake honey buns. All right, that's going to do it for us. Ooh, not enough time to tell you everything that's coming up tomorrow, but I can tell you it's a big show. We got a lot planned. We will see you then. Right now, let's get you to the Fox News Rundown. Kilmeade's out today. He's got a guest host in, but that's coming up right after Fox. All right, I've got to get I double booked a couple things that I've got to get moved around. So I've got to roll. YouTube, thank y'all for playing along today. We will see you tomorrow. Good day.